Well, hello, everybody. This is Tim Green with Rattle Magazine. Welcome to Rattlecast number 254. Thanks so much for joining me. Today's guest, Chera Hammons, is here. She'll be with us for about 5 or 7 minutes. But before we get in, I should say that Rattle is a publication of the Rattle Foundation, a 501c3 nonprofit working to promote the practice of poetry. We've been in continuous publication since 1995. That's almost 30 years, and we are unaffiliated with any other organization. We do all this because we love poetry, and I know you do too. So please do click on the like button and share. Make sure you're subscribed. Ring that bell for notifications. Leave reviews, especially reviews on iTunes. Helps a lot. So leave a review on iTunes if you can figure out how to do that. I'm not an Apple person, so I have no idea how. But if you have Apple and the app, you can leave a review. That would help a lot. Whatever you can do to help spread poetry around the internet would be much appreciated. Now, we always love to start out with our Poets Respond poem, and we have for the fourth time a single haiku as the poet, and they're always wonderful when we have a single haiku that can somehow, in just a few words, capture some major aspect of the news for the week. And Annette Makino is here to talk about her poem. Hey, Annette, how you doing?
Hi, great.
Yeah, it's
Good
so
to be
glad to
here.
have you here. And I do love haiku, and always have. We always want to publish more haiku in Rattle too. So tell us how this poem came to be, what inspired it, and what the process was like to write it.
Yeah, so two threads came together in writing this. For one, I was out on vacation on the Klamath River in Northern California all last week, and there uh, there was a thunderstorm that came out of nowhere on Monday night, and there was dry thunder and dry lightning, later a little bit of rain. But when you live in Northern California, you know that dry thunder and dry lightning, especially, can be very threatening because of
Mm-hmm.
wildfires. And in fact, that storm started 4 wildfires in the area. One of them is still going. It's at 5,000 acres, last I heard. So very ominous. And at the same time, I was tracking the news all last week. As best I could with the limited internet and following the drama of whether Biden was going to step down, and he was insisting he wasn't. He's in it for it, in it to win it. And yet the polls were showing that he was falling farther and farther behind Trump, especially in the swing states. So I actually went through about 6 different drafts of this haiku, getting it more and more succinct to getting down to just 7 words
Mm-hmm.
to sort of combine those two elements.
Yeah, well, why don't you read it so everybody can hear it if they haven't yet? This is your haiku, Dry Thunder, we're labeling it. Go ahead.
Dry thunder, the latest polls roll in.
Yeah, that's a beautiful haiku, and as haiku so often do, it's such a great juxtaposition between the two stories. At what point did you know that those two things fit together? I mean, that's always sort of the magic. After before getting the poem as condensed and tight as possible, there's that magic of that leap. Do you know where that idea came from, that they fit somehow?
Hmm. They actually came together at the same time almost. I mean, I'd been experiencing this storm and reading the news. And so at first I actually liked the phrase dry thunder. And then I thought, well, that's, it's ominous. I feel sort of anxious, a little dread, a little excitement. And what else do I feel that about right now? So
Yeah, I too. And
there we
there are
are.
undertones too in it because, if there's a thunderstorm, at least you get some rain, like much needed
Right.
sustenance, And dry thunder, though, gives us nothing except for
Right.
dread. There's nothing
Right.
positive that comes from dry
Yeah.
thunder. So there's that layer to it too. And then the rhyme too. You don't see haiku that rhyme very often. I let polls and roll in there inside the haiku. Really wonderful stuff. Thanks so much for sharing it, Annette, and for talking about it today.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me.
Yep, thanks. Yeah, so that was Annette Makino with today's haiku, today's Poets Respond poem, Dry Thunder. Wonderful poem there. The very first poet that we ever published a haiku in Poets Respond was Deborah P. Kolodji, who was just a wonderful haiku poet. And she led a haiku hike for us for years at the Wrightwood Arts and Wine Festival. And I'm sad to say that she passed away last night. And she was really a wonderful friend of the show. She was guest on episode number 111 of the Rattlecast. If anybody wants to go back and watch that episode to sort of get a little bit of sense of being with her. It was just a wonderful person. Did so many great things for haiku, the leader of the Southern California Haiku Study Group. She's the one when we interviewed who for the what's his name for the Japanese forms issue. We interviewed the poet, and she was the one who recommended him. Just a wonderful person all around. We love her, and I thought we'd share one of Deborah's poems. She has 4 haiku in that tribute to Japanese forms issue, and this is 4 haiku, and we'll let Deborah read those poems.
Four haiku. Sand blasted by your words, petroglyphs. Light of herons on the beach, Grunion. Lemonade, that moment we know the feeling is gone. Power outage, the spread of neighborhood quiet.
Yeah, and that was Deborah P. Kolodji reading 4 of her haiku from Rattle number 47. And just our heart goes out to all her family. Her daughter's a haiku poet too, and the whole haiku community is mourning her loss tonight. So I thought we'd share that. Now we're going to take a quick break and go to our main guest, Chera Hammons. So sit tight, and we will be right back with more poetry. And we're back. Thanks so much for your patience. Like I said, today's guest is Chera Hammons. Chera has appeared 6 times in Poets Respond, a real veteran of that series. She's winner of the 2017 Penn Southwest Book Award through Penn, Texas, and the 2020 Helen C. Smith Memorial Award through the Texas Institute of Letters. Her poetry collections include Recycled Explosions, The Traveler's Guide to Bomb City, and Maps of Injury. We'll be reading poems from 2 of those books today. Her debut novel, Monarchs of the Northeast Kingdom, is available through Tory House Press. She often writes about chronic illness and invisible disability, horses, and the unique landscape of the Texas Panhandle, where she resides. You can find her on Instagram at Chera_writes. And you can find her website at cherahammons.com. That's Chera, C-H-E-R-A, Hammons, Hammons.com. And here she is, Chera Hammons. Hey, Chera, great to see you again. It's been a couple weeks. You were on for Poet Respond not too long ago. It's good to have you back.
Thank you. Thanks so much for having me.
So let's start out with a poem. And you wanted to start with a Poet Respond poem, which is not in either of these 2 books, but coming out in a new manuscript in the future. So why don't you read The Moon of a Moon is a Moon Moon, which is one of the funnest titles to say. I think I've said it 3 times already this evening, and every time I enjoy it more. Why don't you read
Okay,
that?
good. I thought it would be appropriate to start a poetry conversation with a poem that has wordplay in it, like this one. It came about from reading an article about how scientists had come up with a name for a moon that orbits another moon. And this, as we know now, was Moon Moon. So I thought, what if we named everything that way? This is the algebra of language, word math. Try it. An ebb and flow of sweetness, honeymoon. Childhood, the head covering of someone who is still discovering what to forget. The friend of my friend is my friend. Sorry, bad example. The second friend is silent. There, but not there. Something implied, imagined. Like how I once told students, kill your darlings, but don't bury them. And somehow they knew that what I meant is that redundancy can be as efficient as resurrection. Though there was no real danger, we killed nothing. When the moon appears in a lake, it means that it has dropped low enough for you to wade into, if you want. The moon is blank as a mirror. It doesn't mind if you reflect in its reflection. Foreshadowing, darkness that walks in front of you. Slumlord, the god of not enough. If you are male, you are man, you are he. I am fee, I am woe, I am s. The plural and the possessive, the hiss of air escaping from a tired. Think about this. The enemy of my friend could still be my friend, but probably isn't. Is there any better way to say that one can orbit a body that orbits another body? That gravity ties us to each other and that other bodies orbit us? No, it seems we have finally run out of words. Removing the spaces between them is the only way to make something new. I say I am the daughter of my father. I say I am the daughter of my mother, too.
Yeah, and that was The Moon of a Moon is a Moon from October 14th, 2018. And Chera's been here sharing Poet Respond poems from the very beginning. I think 6 months into the series was the first time you had one in. And it's been pretty regular since then. And you're one of those poets who I always, you don't submit every week, but you submit often enough where there's a few poets like you, maybe a dozen or two that are good, that frequently submit. So I know we'll always have something good because one of y'all will send poems in and then we'll have something. So what is it that draws you to Poet Respond? And that's something I've always wondered about.
I kind of use it as a prompt whenever I am having trouble writing or I feel pent up maybe and I don't know how to really get it out. So when times when my writing's been slow, I look out for news stories that might spark something instead of what I usually do, which is look around me in nature where I live. So it's been really helpful to me over the years. I'm really glad you've started it.
And so, that poem that we just read shows a lot of what you do, which is like play and have fun, sometimes within really serious topics, but there's a lot of playfulness. It's like the sense of you having fun with it and seeing where it goes is there in all your poems, which is one of the things that make them work. Is that something that you try to do every week? Do you always work on a poem and only the ones that sort of succeed come through, or occasionally you have time? How does that go?
It always takes me by surprise what sparks it. So it's not something that I'm doing every week. No, I send you everything I do for Poets Respond, even when it's really terrible, as you might have noticed. Sometimes they're not very good, but it means that I wrote that week and I'm trying. So I hope you don't mind reading the bad ones too.
No, well, that's the thing. I mean, when the poet's good, it's hard to write a bad poem, I think, when you know what you're doing. Even if they don't succeed, it go all the way through. There's always interesting elements and things, it's so poems from good poets are never boring. It's always interesting and you're never going to know where it's going to take you. So it's always definitely a pleasure. So what is your background like? I know, you're from the northern Texas area. I'm getting a little more familiar with Texas. I'm in the woodlands right now. And when did you start writing poetry? And I know you write a lot about the landscape and the area that you live. That's a lot of the themes that come up through. Is poetry something that you've always been interested in?
It is. I wrote my first poem when I was 4 years old. My mom was a first grade teacher and she taught me how to read when I was around 3 or 3.5. So of course, once I learned how to read, I immediately started writing because I loved it so much. I wanted to do that too. So I've been writing most of my life. Mm-hmm. I started sending work off when I was 12 or 13. I was very ambitious, and the first full-length manuscript I sent to the Honickman First Book Prize through the American Poetry Review when I was a sophomore in high school.
Oh, wow.
I feel really bad for whoever got that and had to read it. I hope they knew it was from a high schooler. I don't know if they did.
That's interesting. I mean, we get, for the Rally Young Poets Anthology, we get a lot of poems from poets that age. But to
Kolodji.
have that ambition to like win the Hahnemann Prize, I don't know if I've heard of. I mean, there are some people that are sophisticated and push it forward, but that's pretty rare. Do you remember, like, because so many times what we're trying to do is find some kind of surprise. You know, we're writing for something we didn't know we knew. Do you remember the first time that happened to you? Because I think, you know, we can all relate, because there's a way that, like, I can't remember who said, but we were all, like, born poets. Like, we grow up as poets, we learn nursery rhymes, we write poems, but then something, you know, special happens to some of us where we're sort of struck by the bug of poetry, which to me, I think it's surprising yourself. I think that's so often the key, where you're like, whoa, where'd that come from? You know?
Right.
And is there is something you can remember that was the first time you had that experience, and what age were you?
I actually don't think that really happened where I thought I could take it seriously and invest time and money in it until I was maybe 18. I took a creative writing class at Amarillo College, and the professor told me nobody's written rhyming poetry for 100 years. So that's when I stopped writing rhyming poetry. And he sent one of my poems that I wrote in that class to the Texas Association of Creative Writing Teachers. They have a contest every year, I guess, and I got second. And we got to go to Lubbock, and I got to do my first reading. And that's when I thought, well, maybe this is something I could make something out of.
Well, let's hear the next poem you have up. What do you want to read next?
This is my book, The Traveler's Guide to Bomb City, which is sort of like spending a year here in Amarillo. So the first poem I'm going to read from it is called Amarillo. And I used to go to do readings in other places. Like one time I was in North Carolina, and I asked the audience, raise your hand if you've ever driven through Amarillo. And nearly everybody raised their hand. And I said, who's ever made Amarillo a destination? And all the hands went down. So living in flyover country, I think you sort of want to share where you're from, because where you're from is part of yourself. So this is my poem, Amarillo. There isn't anything pretty to look at here. No landmarks, and the land flat scrub with no trees, dirty blonde, dry beaten with summer, even the people bleached bare, all the same kind. This is the ugly part of Texas. People always say it as they drive through. Their two hot tires in danger of throwing tread on the shimmering asphalt, the ironed out snakes, smeared greasy slicks, and the bitter lemon skunk smell of the highway rushing under the license plates. They can't get out of town fast enough. Neither can we if we are careful. Loving one thing can trap you here, draw you into the narrow neck of a wide bottle, and root you like the spiny mesquites who have survived so long they are native. Georgia O'Keeffe stayed for a year herself, it's that hard to leave. The yellow yards are feral, jagged with stalks, ruthless with vineweed tangling through the fences, white flowers, palms to the sun like Baptists swaying that I have to keep pulling out, and the grackles and pigeons hang to the white hem of a sky brown with acres of cattle. Born under a bright horizon of clouds slow rolling over the plains like bison, thundering, spitting windy rain, that is what native eyes first see and why they have to stay. The roots stick, flypaper sweet, and you get stuck. In a room, I am alone. In a house, we are alone together, unsustainable. It is not that we are a simple people. We stayed because it all started out so well. Then we learned how to wring beauty from anything we could.
Yeah, great last line of that poem, and such great details, too. That was Amarillo by Chera Hammons.
That's what technically should be pronounced.
I know, I keep doing that. But it's fascinating that you picked that poem to oops, hang on. The prompt for later this week. You can still hear me, right? I bumped my microphone cord. Okay. The prompt for this week was to write a poem, a journalistic poem that describes your place where you live, and using all your senses. And it was like you picked this poem because you knew that. I'm not sure if that's the case, but it is a perfect example of the poems we're going to be reading later today on the show. And it's just so full of that rich imagery, which your poems always are. That's one of the reasons why they jump out in Poets Respond, is because they have so many, details and imagery. Is that something? How does that come about as you're writing a poem? Are you imagining, are you seeing the thing and you're grabbing details to pick? And
Yeah.
does it sort of come naturally? I could also imagine it like being added later, though, like sprucing things up as you move along. What's your writing process like as far as the visuals?
I do actually literally picture myself standing there and what I'm seeing and what stands out to me. I've always been one who was focused on details. Um, so that's what's coming into my poetry a lot is I try to notice the things that other people maybe don't notice, the thing that contains more information than the other thing you see. I don't know if that makes sense, but you have to give it as much punch as you can because poem is short. So that detail that really defines the other details, I guess, or that has some kind of clear connotation or emotion attached to it, that's what I gravitate towards.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, yeah. Well, we see the details there in that poem. Let's read another one.
Okay. So you've heard "Don't make a writer mad" because you'll end up in their book. Well, somewhere the man in this poem has told his friends a much different story than the one I'm going to tell you. And I hope he hears this poem someday. It's called "What I Taught Them." A man I've never seen before is chasing my two horses, running them across the pasture and waving his arms at them while his slim girlfriend watches, black sunglasses astride blowing blonde hair as she raises her phone to document his bravado, the shorts that flap in the wind, and his fleshy arms arcing out like wings that have been plucked. The horses, because I have taught them to trust, seem more surprised than frightened at first, flying over the yucca in bursts, then turning to see if the man has been satisfied, but he keeps coming at them. They are used to standing still and lifting their feet for the farrier, who files down their rough edges every 8 weeks. They know to take the bite of the vet's needle without flinch or kick. That is why, if this man wanted, he could walk up to them, rub the swirls of hair under their forelocks, breathe them in, their wildness and joy in the sun and sweet hay smell of their windswept coats. It is why he's able to sweep them away for sheer nothingness, giving them no reasons. I would hurt him if I could, this man who has no idea, who says he was running because he wanted to run, not chasing my two horses on my land because the woman who came with him is impressed by that sort of thing. I follow him to his shiny white car with its dealer plates, watch him drive slowly away because he is not sorry enough. The horses pace as I walk back to them, eyes white-rimmed, and I worry they will fear me again, having just been treated unfairly. But they recognize my voice and let me step among them, lay their warm heads against me for comfort, snorting and blowing from their flight. Then, this is how much I love them. They ask if they did what I would have wanted of them, and I say yes.
Yeah, and that was What I Taught Them from Traveler's Guide to Bomb City by Chera Hammons. And Chera, the horses come up so much in your work, and I know, from reading, your submissions over the years too. I'm not sure how many, but we had the Horse Girl poem in the last issue of Rattle 2. There's so many of your poems have to do with horses, and that's such a big part of your life. What is it that drew you to horses? How did that, you don't see many poets riding horses and keeping horses. How were you drawn to that?
No, I don't really know. I've always been obsessed with them. My parents bought me my first pony when I was 10 years old, and we didn't have land, so she was boarded at a stable, and I only got to see her once a week. But I could never just get it out of my system. My parents thought it was a phase. They were like, we'll just get her this pony, and she'll stop complaining about it, and then, it'll get out of her system, and we can move on with life. But it didn't work that way. Like, I don't feel like myself if I don't have a horse around to talk to. So I had to try to sell them at one point because they're very hard to take care of. They're basically made of glass. Like, if you look at them funny, they die. My horse friends and I are always just like, why did God make them this way? But I can't do it. I don't know why.
Yeah, well, there's something about horses, and it reminds me. It's similar to my former father-in-law as a train conductor. And there's something like trains that's similar too. Like, we're just drawn. Like, if you go, there's some hikes around the mountain town in Wrightwood, and there's just, if you hike those hikes, there are people just standing around waiting for trains. Waiting to take pictures of trains and feel the train. And there's something similar about horses too. There's some kind of, I don't know what it is. What do you think is it about horses that draws people's interest so much?
They're very intuitive animals. They're very intelligent. They're generous. I mean, they weigh half a ton and they let us do all kinds of things to them. I don't know anything that has generosity like a horse does. And there's just something about them that makes you feel good whenever you ride them. Maybe you're slow and clumsy, short like I am on the ground, but when you're on a horse, you're fast and you're strong. Um, they give us a lot. They loan us more than just the physical aspect, just the work. It's more than that.
Yeah, and there's something too that seems like just deeper. I mean, humans using horses, in the same way, dogs are part of the family, horses being part of the family for so long, so much of history. But then there's the power too, I mean, you see as a horse runs, the flowing mane and the muscles like rippling as it's just this powerful animal that's built for speed and, that one thing. How many horses have you owned? And taken care of?
My lifetime?
Yeah, I'm curious.
Right now I have 5. My husband's sitting over here, so I'm looking to him for confirmation because I drug him into this. He was not a horse person, and then he married me. He became a horse person very quickly. But yeah, now I think we have, well, actual horses, we only have 3. When my health got worse, we sold the 2 main saddle horses and got donkeys instead, which I also adore, because they're much safer to be around and easier to ride for my back and my neck issues. But so I have a Mustang that I adopted from the Bureau of Land Management a while back. I have a Tennessee Walker that I trained myself. He's 10 years old now. I got him when he was a yearling. And then I have an old pony who's half blind and sweet as pie, a little old spotted pony. That was my husband's first horse.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, it's just such an interesting interest to have. Well, let's hear the next poem.
Okay. Whenever I was in grad school at Goddard, they said, one of my advisors, Elena Georgiou, said, you don't have to just read poetry books for your semester work. You can read something that interests you and apply it in your work. So I chose to read A Brief History of Time because what's more interesting than the universe? But the only thing I really picked up from it was that it takes 8 minutes for the light from the sun to reach us. And the sun will burn out in 5,000 million years, but that's too far away for us to really worry about. So I wrote this poem, Teotwaki. Teotwaki stands for the end of the world as we know it. The first thing you should know is that no one will make it. But think how the planet must look to a solar body of light as it sees itself flashing like new needles in all the places that have water, 16 minutes after sending its heart out to an ocean warming with green and waking the fish. This is why the speed of light is how we measure every other speed, by the one we first knew when it made the cells clutch for it, to alchemy its sugar, or when it made the dog loll his tongue, because that's how dogs sweat, wide open. Not with cans of stewed tomato and jars of creamy peanut butter, stacks of toilet paper and ammunition, the bunkers and basements, as if going further underground might help keep anyone from what's coming. That is one sure ending, too far for us to care, a light that winds down to a silence after spinning for so long, tired of taking us places. I was in the back seat. My father was driving. My eyes were closed so the trees flashed by in waves of yellow shining against dark veins and red eyelid insides, and the window was warm. Then I opened my eyes and forgot my own science. Like the children and children and children before and after me, ripples of sound in all directions, tries for a life, medicine, sheep, jogging suits, busy until a light goes out and you can't see anything moving even if you try. 5,000 million years and 8 minutes from now, someone is going to miss this.
Yeah, and that was Teotwaki, which I was trying to figure out what that was without, I didn't have access to my phone and Google, and I was wondering if that was maybe the name of like a comet or something. I was trying to figure it out. So that makes sense. Another beautiful poem full of so many images and details. So what is your actual, as you put this book together, this is the second to last book that you have out already, Traveler's Guide to Bomb City. How did you decide to structure the book like you did, as a traveler's guide like that, and Bomb City, being having a fitting reason too, which we'll get to later, I think. But why write the book that you did for this one?
This one was actually my creative thesis for my MFA, and it started out a very different book that was about twice as long and half as good. The title of that one was Home Ranges. And I remember my advisor had a problem with the first two poems that I started with. She was like, well, you can't go from this one to this one because I have no idea what to expect next. They're just too dissimilar. And I'd never thought a whole lot about arranging a manuscript before that. To me, it was like a mixtape and you went from emotion to emotion. It's not quite that way. It has to be a little more logical. So I started reading things about how to arrange a manuscript the right way. Like Jeffrey Levine has a really good blog about it, about how the poems need to speak to each other and you need to pick up a thread and carry it. So for this one, I really didn't know how to arrange it until I came up with the title. That was the right title. And that told me, like, traveler's guides can have sections. So it has sections like weather, animals, like native animals, people, all the things that you would find in a normal traveler's guide.
Yeah, well, it's a really interesting book full of, it's just these vivid poems that describe the place so well. And it's a place that I think, as you said, many people have driven through. I haven't even driven through yet, but maybe sometime we'll get a road trip up there. Texas is a very big state, I'm learning.
It is.
And very different up there in the northern part. So what is your process like to sit down and write? One of the things, somebody, Donna Best on Facebook mentions flash fiction as a kind of, with a kind of question mark. And there's a combination, there's a casualness to like the structure and the line breaks, because there's so much focus on the images and the movement through the poem. So what is the writing process like once you get, you said you have the vision in your head for what the poem is doing. What's your process like for getting it on the page, and why do you make the choices that you do?
Ooh, the big question. My first goal is just to get it out of my head and onto the page. So the first draft is usually really bad and disjointed, and I'm just trying to get the images down and try to define some sort of loose connection between them and some sort of emotional impact that they should have together. So I usually write a rough draft and then I sleep on it for a day. And then the next day I come back and try to see what the point of the poem is. Like, if you can't define the point of the poem, nobody else is going to be able to define it either. And my fear is writing poems that are meh. Or somebody reads it and says, I don't know why I should care. Yeah, go ahead.
Well, is that the biggest thing? Like, if you mentioned, sending everything you have to Poets Respond, but is that the thing that you're looking for when you think a poem works? Like, is that the primary thing, I guess, where it fails, So often when we're critiquing poems on our workshop show, it's like, well, these lines are great, but where does it go? So what? Like, where's the turn? What's changed? What did I learn, Is that the thing, that's the hardest to find for you, would you say?
I think it is. And I've learned lately that what fixes that problem generally is just saying straightforwardly what it is the poem is about. That's been working for me lately. I don't know if that's a good trick, but if it works for you, if you're a poet, try it.
Well, yeah. So how do you set up, like how do you say what the poem is about? Like I assume, like, if you're pulling from images, I think the process is often like a scene presents itself and you're kind of moving through it, pulling it like you would from a dream, being a stenographer for whatever you're witnessing in your imagination as you daydream, really. And then like, how do you even know what the poem is about at that point? I think I wonder if maybe it's because it's like the deeper voice in your head that's telling you, like, what that statement's coming from is like a different place that kind of knows, even though you're not quite sure. And, so often the best lines in poems are like little simple declarative kind of statements that sort of come from your subconscious or from your right brain or something. And they're saying, oh, this is what it's about, So I think that's a great trick, because sometimes we don't like ask the question, kind of, So that makes a lot of sense. Do you ever, like, when you come across that, are you ever surprised by what it's about?
Yeah, I love it when writing surprises you. Whenever, and I feel like maybe people who are so focused on academic type writing, like, the academic type poetry, I'm more of a emotional type poet. And I'm not saying one's not better than the other. They both have their place, but I don't know what I feel like a poem, to me, to be good, has to have an emotional impact to it, and it has to have room to have those surprises for the poet, because then the reader will have them too. And my best poems are the ones that have something unplanned, that the connections made another connection for me.
Yeah. Yeah. And pulling back too, where is that image come from? Do you know? Like how what generates that first for you? Like if you say you read a news story and you maybe have an emotion about it, right? I think that's probably how they come about, the Poet Respond poems especially. But how do you find like the entry into that emotion through an image? That seems maybe is the tricky part for the way you're going about it.
For me, a lot of times it's research. I'll do research about where the event took place, or the people who lived there, or something interesting about the location, something like that. Because a lot of my entry points are facts that I don't think a lot of people know. And that's what makes them interesting to me. So I hope it makes it interesting to somebody else too. So I tend to over-research things. Like, I'll do hours of research on some little thing and then come out with one line.
Yeah, well, that's a great way to do it for sure. Well, let's read the last poem that you're going to share from The Traveler's Guide to Bomb City, which is Emergency Supplies.
Yeah, this is a favorite when I do readings here. Whenever I worked for the city of Amarillo doing their social media, I used to dig around on the internet, on their website, and find the weird corners of things that were old and people didn't know they were still there. So one time I found a section that was a bunch of disaster plans. And one of the plans they had was evacuation in case of zombie apocalypse. And I was digging around for it the other day and I couldn't find it anymore if they have a new website. So maybe that got lost in the shuffle, but that's what sort of sparked this poem. Emergency supplies. This is an end of the world kind of love. You know, a grab onto something because the whole place is coming down sort of situation. When all the volcanoes erupt at the same time and the sun supernovas, you'll still be the hottest. When the nukes go off in billowing fungi, we'll close our eyes and imagine the earth climbing up a mountain in clouds like a Sherpa going to visit his god. Even while we huddle in the shopping mall listening to zombies scratching at the cinder blocks, I'll think about how you're the one I want to die with. And if you get infected, that's okay too. You can corrupt me, and we'll still have things in common. Pretend we've just grown old, developed peculiar tastes, and don't get along with our kids anymore. You'll complain to withering houseplants that our children never call us since we tried to gnaw the arms off their dates. That's why they stopped coming around. Anyway, let's grab a couple of beers and watch things blow up on the evening news. If you're not busy later, we can look for a cave together, outfit it with spring-sprouting sofas, drag a dented dishwasher in front of the opening so no one will know when we hide in it. We can live a long time on canned tomatoes, waiting for all that we've saved to run out. Let's get buried under the last breath of the world that no one could survive long in. Let's be bothered by endings for the last time.
Yeah, great poem, great last line too. I love the direct address as a way to connect. There's Emergency Supplies by Chera Hammons. And I wanted to ask you too about the line breaks in your poems. We had a guest, Christine Potter, was on not too long ago, who meticulously makes the line lengths like all the same length, like to the character level. She's so, like, you can see her poems from across the room. And yours have this casual feel that has to do, I think it does a great job of allowing you to focus more on the scene that's playing out in your head and like sort of forget that you're reading a poem a little more easily maybe. But because they sort of have a casual nature to them, you know, it seems like a lot of options. So how do you like just shape the poem on the page?
I actually really have fun doing the line breaks.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes it's where I want a word to have more impact or more, I guess, room in the reader's thought, more weight. Sometimes it's for pacing. Like you said, I like work that's conversational, and that's how people talk.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I really like focusing on sometimes leaving a surprise where you think it's going to end one way and then the next line changes the direction. I like doing that too.
Yeah. So how much time would you say that you spend on a typical poem? Is there a lot of playing in that way? I mean, you mentioned a lot of research to get one line.
Mhm.
Do you do a lot of editing after the fact too, or do you kind of like, or is it sort of in and out once you know what you're writing about?
I feel like my best poems happen really organically and quickly. The Horse Girl poem that's in the summer rattle, um, that one used to be 5 pages and I wrote it all in one sitting. So I cut 2 pages of it before I sent it to you. You're welcome.
Wow.
Some poems have taken years and years to find the right ending, the right shape, the right extra detail. So it's all over the place for me, but I don't throw anything away because I found if I keep a file of those old poems that didn't work, eventually something's going to come along that makes it work.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, that makes a lot of sense too. Let's move on to your next book next. So next is Maps of Injury, which has a very different feel in subject matter. So what can you tell us about how this book came to be and what the topic is?
Yes, Maps of Injury was published in 23 Stress Publications. The cover is a map of rivers that look like veins. And then Sundress was very clever and put this kind of target looking title in the middle of it. I wrote it whenever I was diagnosed with Lyme disease. So I was having all these health issues. I had no idea why. I thought I was going to die because I was having all this heart trouble. So I wrote this book very, very quickly, thinking it's like the last book I was going to write. And so it's kind of the journey. It's still very much set in here in the Panhandle. I don't think I could leave the Panhandle as long as I'm here. It's going to be in my writing. But it was the journey from mysterious health issues to diagnosis and then figuring out what the diagnosis meant.
Yeah, so how did that come about? I mean, it's something that a lot of people worry about, ticks, and actually Dick Westheimer here, has up in the Ohio area, has a farm. We were there. He was warning us about ticks as we go through, and his wife was when we were visiting him. And I don't know if I ever told him, but I got in the car and a tick crawled down my leg right then, and I had like brushed something, and luckily it didn't bite, and who knows what kind of tick it was and what it had or whatever. But it is not something that it's something a lot of people worry about, and yet it's not something a lot of people experience. It's and having sort of strange symptoms, where you didn't have a bite that looked weird, I assume, and it was the symptoms that came, and then you were wondering how it could be. I mean, what was the journey like to figure out that that's what it was? How long did it take to narrow it down to that?
17 years.
Oh, wow.
I had a bite in high school, and I thought it was a spider bite, so I never thought anything of it. And I think it was in East Texas where I got the bite, so be careful.
Mm-hmm.
People say it's not in Texas, but it is. And our livestock get it here in the Panhandle, so it's everywhere. So I went to all these doctors, and of course they're just giving me antidepressants and anti-anxiety pills. I told one doctor, I've been running a fever for 10 years, and he gave me antidepressants. So I kind of given up.
Mm-hmm.
And then my husband actually found a new type of doctor, or a doctor I hadn't known before, called a DO, where they look more holistically at your whole body instead of just one little symptom and an isolated, all these little symptoms apart. They put them together. So they did a Lyme test and determined that I had definitely been exposed, and I had a lot of the classic symptoms, but it did turn out later, after this book was out, it turned out later that I actually have a genetic issue that complicated things too.
Yeah.
So it's sort of like just still continuing to, but I feel like we're getting a handle on everything that's gone on now.
Yeah, well, that's good to hear. So there is like a diagnostic test. They're testing maybe for antibodies or something, so to know you've
There
been
is, but
exposed.
it's very, very unreliable. So you should go by symptoms as well.
Yeah, and what are the treatments for it now? Are there things to do
Um,
proactively?
I had to do a lot of self-treating because the doctors I was seeing, they were expensive or they were in other states. So there are supplements you could take that address some of it. There's long-term antibiotics, which cause other harms. Um, I think just focusing on your immune system and getting your whole system healthy, I think that's what helped get me over that part of what was going on.
Yeah, yeah. Well, that's definitely a rough thing and an important thing to be writing about too. And then, of course, you tie this into other topics as well. So it's a whole maps of injury. It's a plural maps, and brings in a lot of other things too. Do you want to read a poem from that book?
Sure. This is one of my favorite poems that I've ever written, actually. Like they're children. You're not supposed to have favorites, but you do. So I went to college in Santa Fe for a little while, and I still go there when I can. I haven't been in a while, but I love it there. My favorite things to do there are eat Hatch green chilies until I cry, and go to the fossil galleries. There are these stores and galleries that just have all these really cool fossils. So this I wrote after going to one of those galleries. The capacity for malignancy is ancient. The woman on the gallery floor says yes when I ask if I can photograph the fossil of Proterohippus bentacolum that has the plaque naming it the dawn of horses. It's actually the only replica we have in the store, she says, and shows me photographs of the original, which has the same black horse shape, black splintered ribs, nestled among prehistoric fish in the sandy rock. She says, but how the ancestor of horses ended up on a lake bottom is a mystery as complex as ours. On Facebook, my friend posts the announcement that at least one type of cancer existed in humans nearly 2 million years ago, that the bone of a foot has been discovered with the same cells as those that make us sick. This way, we can confirm that death doesn't need to evolve. I still remember the spiral of tissue from the breast biopsy floating in the fluid in the little jar, how I couldn't lift a gallon of milk or I'd start to bleed. I'm wearing the necklace that belonged to my maternal grandmother, who died and took her cancer with her when she was 24. We wear fragile bodies, and now it would seem that they have always known how to turn against us, though there are so many other kinds of endings we could find. No matter where we go, we walk on bones. The gallery is air-conditioned and clinical, and its most stunning fossil is the only one that's a replica, a horse that is dog-sized and has toes instead of hooves. The way it lies on its side reminds me of the horse I had to euthanize because of tumors. The man with the backhoe dug a ramp into a grave. I led the horse to the bottom and the vet let him down in stages. We watched him die to make sure he wouldn't know that he was being buried. There used to be a mound over him, but now there's nothing. I left his halter on so that whoever finds him will understand that he was loved.
Yeah, and that's a powerful poem. That was the capacity for malignancy is ancient. Really interesting, and one of those poems that shows all the research you've done. So it's interesting to hear. You don't hear poets say very often that this is their favorite poem, and I'm always curious about that when I hear that. So what is it that makes this your favorite poem, or just a favorite poem of your own in general? What is it that makes you say that?
I think this one in particular, it has the loss of the horse in it, and that's always really, really hard for me. Like I almost never recover, but it made it okay. And I'm grateful to it for doing that for me. Like it sounds weird to say the poem like it's not a part of, like, not something I wrote, but sometimes they surprise you like that, and
Yeah.
it made something that was really tough okay for me.
Yeah, well, so often that's the case. I mean, there's a reason why writing is healing, because we come to terms with the things that we're trying, that our subconscious mind is trying to tell us how to come to terms with, but we're not. And so you get sort of stuck in these little knots of yourself. And then a poem, just writing a poem on your own, can untangle those knots, and it actually leads to a kind of psychological healing that can have profound effects, which is we've talked to psychologists who've shown that, James Pennebaker and people like that. So it's really interesting to hear you say that that's the reason. I think that's probably, if I think of like my own favorite poems myself, it's that exact reason too. It's like this poem meant a lot to me personally. Like I discovered and put something together that I didn't quite understand. And, I don't care if anybody else likes it or not. It's just something that helped me move forward as a human being. And so, we have a special place in our hearts for those poems. I think that's what we're trying to do at all times too. So you held up the cover. When you hold the cover of this book up again, it's a beautiful and a really memorable cover. I don't have a hard copy of it, but and it's a square book too, which highlights that the way that cover was designed. Maps of Injury by Chera Hammons. So how did you pick that as the cover? What was the process like? It's really rare to have a book in that shape. Usually publishers want to have uniform books that helps for, the bookshelves and things like that. Right. And so it's like going out on a limb to have a book that's square. How did you talk them into doing it, and how'd the cover come to be?
Sundress did a phenomenal job on this book. And they actually suggested the square shape because some of the lines were so long and we didn't want to break them in the wrong places. But I like it because my fingers are really bendy and it's easy for me to hold.
Yeah. Well, it's a beautiful book. And the cover art, like where'd the cover art come from?
It's from an artist on Etsy. Actually, I can tell you their name. I saw it a long time ago before the book was done. Nelson Minar, Minar. A lot of times the artists on Etsy, if you see art you like that you think would be good for a cover, you can just message them and ask how much would they charge you to use it, or would they be okay with you using it? And a lot of times they're really cool with it. So that's what happened here. Yeah,
and I'll tell you, I don't know if you've ever talked about this before, but that's all we do with Rattle covers. I mean, we have an open submissions thing, and if people submit a cover that's like great and sort of fits what we want, great, but more often than not, we don't have a cover that fits what we're looking for and the colors and the layout and kind of stuff. So, we just Google, and Katie, it's a fun thing to do. So Katie helps me out with that, and we look through art. And then if you just message an artist and say, hey, we love this work, would you let us use it for a cover? And we pay them $200 like we pay like a poet. It's the same. Like it's art, and in poetry's art, we pay it all the same. And that's where we get all of our covers. And almost no one, I don't know if anybody has ever said no. And even one person, the cover of our what was it, the postcard poetry issue, whatever number with that, it was a train moving through. We wanted to do that for some reason, I can't even remember, and he couldn't let us use it because it had already been used for another cover. So he made us his own art, like a separate thing just for us, so because he, so people are enthusiastic about this. So, don't skimp on looking for covers. Find something you love, and it'll really work. So it's cool to hear how that came to be. This is the part of the show where I should say, if anybody has any questions for Chera, please leave them in the chat window, especially on YouTube, but at Facebook too, I'll take a peek at. And also, if you haven't do click the like button. That helps a lot. We always have more people watching live than we have likes, and if I say click the like button in the middle of the show, then it'll sort of catch up and we'll get even more viewers, because we get those drive-by people just passing through, which is always great, sort of hitting them with poetry. So in the meantime, let's read. We have 2 poems left. Let's read the second to last poem you've got for us, Chera. This is from Rattle as well, but it's fit into Maps of Injury. So let's hear this one.
Great. This was another Poets Respond poem, and I have some current event poems spread throughout this book. A lot of them were Poets Respond rejects. And the editor wanted to remove those to make the book more cohesive, which is probably a good idea and smarter than what I did. But it was important to me to leave them in because part of being chronically ill is that you become necessarily sometimes self-involved. You forget there's an outside world because you're thinking of yourself and what's going on and what can I do to fix it. And then I would see something in the news and it would jolt me out of that. And I would suddenly remember there's a wider world out there, and it would put things back into perspective. So this is one of those poems. It's about a plane crash. The Descent of the Germanwings. Musicians know how to write silence, how to lay lines and measures across a white landscape to show where music is and where it can't be, where notes should swell and where they should rest. If I were a musician, I might write it this way: empty measure after empty measure, than the cymbal left ringing out. Everyone would know what I meant then. But poetry doesn't speak with silence the way music can. It can give you images, the slow drop through a tent of cloud, the way the land stretches forever in veins of rock and snow. It can put spaces in between things to spread them out. The baby's cry hanging in the air, caught as in a photograph with the same strange stillness as a horse caught mid-stride. The metal glittering sharp as ice around the flanks of the Alps. The fragments of bodies gathered and lifted out of where they fell, as gently held as early asters, or love letters smuggled through a war. If I were a musician, I could write it another way too. I could unroll the lines of the staff like a fence. The notes would settle all over it like wrens. Then they would sing if they felt a song there.
Yeah, there was Descent of the German Wings, another poem early on in Poetry Spawn too. I think that was one of the ones, I think we had you 6 months after we started Poetry Spawn, and then another month after that, this poem came up. And if everyone remembers, I don't know if you do, the German Wings was the one, I believe, right, was the one where the pilot was suicide, like a suicide murder for no reason whatsoever, which is really hard to come to terms with that. Just as some random act of malice and loathing or something where the pilot just practiced, I think, if I remember right, flying into mountains and then flew into a mountain with a plane full of people. Just a terribly shocking thing. And then to have a moving poem written after it was so, to make have some beauty even in that tragedy is something that's great to be able to do. So wonderful poem there. It's one of my favorite poems from Poetry Spawn, really, The Descent of the German Wings. So thanks for sharing that. There was a question. I'm trying to find the question. Somebody wanted a deeper dig at that thing we were talking about before. If I can find it. Yeah. So Mark Grenier wanted to know, how does feeling inform or create meaning, which rules the image, language, rhythm, sound? And so it's a tough question. But we talked about it a little bit, how the poems come to be. But how do the feelings, they're things that create meaning somehow. How does that operate for you? I still how do you project that emotion onto the page is what we're all trying to do as poets, A
poem has so much involved in it that people can forget about. It's not just the words on the page, it's the sound. It's the sound you hear in your head. It's the shape of it. It's the white space that's in it. It's what you don't say and what you do. So I think you need to focus on all of that in order to create what it is you want readers to come away with. And you as a poet need to have a clear idea of what that is if you want it to work. That's something I've been working on a lot in the last couple of years. There were a couple of years where I didn't write or spit anything recently. And then when I came back, I wanted to come back strong. And I've been really focusing on the whole thing. And then whenever you put your poems together in a manuscript, I'm working with an agent now on the latest poetry manuscript that I have completed. And it's called Birds of America. But it's been so interesting to work with an agent, so illuminating, because her focus is totally different than things I focus on before. Mm-hmm. Like I mentioned before, I would put a book together like it was a mixtape. And the things that she noticed and the changes she requested, it made it more like I was making a music album. So now I feel more like Fiona Apple Fetch the Bolt Cutters, less like a high school cassette tape with great mix written on it. And I wish everybody could experience that sort of entire view, somebody who knows what they're doing telling you, this is working, we need this thread to be clearer. I don't know. It's a hard thing to accomplish, and it helps to have help. Mm-hmm. I don't know if that really answered, but
No, I think it does. I mean, it's a hard question to answer too. I think you did a great job of answering it. It sounds like you're doing more, caring about the reader, and thinking about yourself. I think it's so easy to, because like you said earlier, your favorite poems are the ones that have that special meaning for you emotionally, that connect and are healing and bridge the gaps in yourself and let you move forward. And so So we have to write those, but then we're writing for an audience too at the same time. And it's sort of easy. It's easy to sort of go one way or the other. To me, a lot of like stuff like Instagram poets and things like that are pushing too much into the doing what the audience does. We talked to Instagram poets and even, Pavana Reddy, who we interviewed, talked about how, audience capture, you're sort of driven to write what people want to hear instead of what you need to say. And so that's like the one side to go wrong with it. But then the other side, you can go really astray too, and just going so into yourself that nobody cares what you're writing. And so it sounds like you're focused more on finding, what people need out of what you have to say rather than just what you have to say.
Yes, that's exactly what I've been working on. I'm tired of writing about myself. I'm tired of hearing about myself. I feel like after 40 years of doing this, I finally am doing what I always wanted to do, and it's going the way I wanted it to go. Like, it's this book that the agent has. It's the first time I felt like the book matches the picture I had in my head. So I really hope she's able to sell it and get readers for it. That would be great. But even if she doesn't, I feel like I learned so much, and it's something that I'll always have.
Mm-hmm. And what is that book called, and what is it about?
It's called Birds of America.
Mm-hmm.
It examines how one act of violence can reverberate through a lot of different places and ways and times, in unexpected ways sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
And the main question at the heart of it is, how do we learn to love each other, and how do we learn to love this planet when what we love is ending?
Mm-hmm.
Everything ends, right? So
yeah. Mm-hmm. And so how you said it was more like the vision of what you wanted. What do you mean by that? Can you dig into that a little more?
I don't know if you've ever painted a picture or taken a photograph, and then like you look at it and it's sort of like it has the kind of lines that you wanted. It has the sort of feel, but it's not quite there. There's something a little off about it, or it's just not what you had, this majestic picture that you had in your head when you started, or what you thought you were seeing through the lens. I feel like I've always been just a little bit wrong. And now this work, I have a lot of confidence in it. And I think what made that difference was I took a hiatus for a couple of years. I got off social media. And I said, you know what? I'm never going to make it in the Poe biz. Screw it. I'm just going to write what I like.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what I did. I wrote with no other voices in my head, with nobody looking over my shoulder. And it was what I wanted it to be finally.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, maybe tying in, Jimmy Pappas wanted to know if you played the clarinet, because you have a great poem about the clarinet. So first of all, you?
Yes, I did from 6th grade through 12th grade. Mm-hmm. And I still have it in my closet, and I get it out and scare the cats with it sometimes.
That's right. Well, that's the instrument my son picked. He's in, just graduated 4th grade, where they start the music, and he picked the clarinet. So yeah.
Make sure his reed is wet enough, because he'll be squeaky.
Yeah, for sure. So, but that leads into another question, though. Do you think because you mentioned research, but so much of your poems, like the place you grew up, the horses that you love, and the chronic illness that you've gone through, or the topics of what you write about, do you think that you can, and it's okay, I guess, to write about things that you don't know, that you haven't experienced, things that are beyond your experience? Or do you think that poets should stick with what they know? Write what you know is a adage that we hear a lot. Do you agree with that, or do you think research pays off too?
For me personally, I root everything in things that I've experienced, or if I haven't experienced it, then I find a way to experience it. Like my new novel, that will hopefully also find a publisher soon. I learned how to do archery because one of the characters is an archer. So that was really fun.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm a perfectionist. I'm so afraid of making mistakes that I only do. Like I make sure as far as I can that it's right.
Mm-hmm.
So for me personally, I would be afraid to make a mistake if I was writing about something that I didn't already know about or experience.
Yeah. One last quick question from Hamet Malak. She asks, does Chera teach at all? And I know you've been the writer in residence somewhere recently, but do you teach a lot or frequently?
I taught Comp 1 and 2 for a while, and then I was the writer in residence for a while, and I taught free workshops, which the university ended up not liking because I wasn't bringing in money, so my job got cut. They did not like the free workshop.
Mm-hmm.
But I really did enjoy teaching, especially the smaller groups.
Mm-hmm.
I loved helping students find their voices and their potential. It was just like the biggest privilege.
Yeah.
So I did, but not anymore.
Yeah. Well, we're about out of time. Let's wrap up with one last poem from Maps of Injury.
All right. You know how we have to change the time twice a year and everybody hates it?
Definitely.
This poem was my way of giving it a reason. Daylight saving. Today we are the first ones awake. If we hadn't set our alarms to maintain our routines, we would still be in bed, wondering if the other dreamed. The coffee maker, microwave, and oven blink yesterday's time as unabashedly incorrect as children. 7 o'clock is dark again, not like it used to be, so the sun doesn't streak across the kitchen, doesn't shine from behind the shade until I can't stand it anymore and have to let it all in. It's too early now for the birds to sing. The dogs blink at us sleepily when we let them into the yard. Confused but willing to accept our instruction, they stretch and yawn and reschedule their affairs. We could do anything we wanted to them and they would accept it, but we are not cruel. We only do even this because we have to. Later, the antelope who haven't learned the shift of our traffic routines will gawk in the road. They will stand still, bewildered as we bear down on them and edge by. Tomorrow, wiser, they will forage on the crest of the hill out of reach. The news will come on at the same time it always has, and it will be the same news. But the horses we must teach to have an earlier hunger. Later, we'll lie in bed, listening to each other breathe, but understanding there is nothing to be said. It's okay, this adjustment, this one more year. Spring never lasts long enough. The single hour of light, this one we keep, is one we think we can redeem.
That's a beautiful. Thanks for having that excuse, because I cannot stand daylight savings time and the nonsense of doing it, and the fact that like almost everybody wants to end it and yet we can't. Like that's how incompetent our government is. That even though nobody wants it, nobody cares. They can't even come up with just saying, "Oh, let's not do that anymore." So except for Arizona, which apparently they could figure it out, but nobody else can. Anyway, yeah, glad for giving me that. So I'll think about that next year or in a couple months when we switch the calendar again and fall back. So it's like you got to wake up early. Ugh, it's just the worst. Anyway, Chera, thanks so much for being a guest. Love your books and love all the contributions you've made over the years, especially to Poets Respond. It is like some of my favorite poems are yours, and the fact that you're there, with some other poets allows the series to be possible. So thanks for sharing that and being here tonight.
Thank you so much for everything you do.
Yeah, thank you, and take care, and good luck on your forthcoming book too.
Thanks, I appreciate it.
Thanks. Yeah, so Chera Hammons. You can find all of Chera's work at her website, which is cherahammons.com. That's CheraHammons.com. Also, you can find her on Instagram at Chera_writes. And that's going to be it for the first segment of the show. Now we're going to move on to the prompt lines. And the prompt for this week was to write a journalistic poem that explores the sensory details of where you live. Such a strange coincidence that Amarillo, Texas appeared in that first poem that Chera shared, because that is what we're all doing today. So if you have a poem like that you'd like to share, there's a 1-page max on the prompt lines. Of course, if you're going to submit it for the prompt poem of the month, they can be as long as they want, but to share on the show, 1-page max, so we can get to everybody, because these shows are getting long, if you haven't noticed. But if you'd like to share a poem, all you have to do is email it first to promptlines@rattle.com. That's promptlines, all one word, at rattle.com. And then that way we can share the poem on screen as you read it, which is always really nice to be able to read along. And then join the Zoom link, which I'm about to deploy on Facebook and YouTube. I'll pin it to the top. Only go to the Zoom if you would like to share a prompt poem. And it doesn't have to be, I should say too, does not have to be a poem that you wrote this week. It can be a poem from a previous prompt as well. But if you'd like to share a prompt poem, go there. Otherwise, the best place to enjoy these poems is the YouTube or Facebook or X feed you're watching right now, because that way you can see it and it just has a better experience. So sit tight. Either way, we'll be right back with more poetry. And we're back. Thanks so much for your patience. We have our prompt poems editor, Katie Dozier, here. Hey, Katie, how you doing?
I'm doing great, thanks. I would love that the guest tonight wrote a prompt poem accidentally, so that worked out right.
That did. That worked out pretty well.
Yeah,
Not too bad. Mm-hmm. So what did you write for this week?
All right. So for this week, I went ahead and so you know this, but I guess everybody doesn't know this. I couldn't sleep last night, so I had one of those. I'm going to get out of bed, write a poem. Mm-hmm. And so it was nice because then I didn't feel as sad about sleeping bad for no apparent reason. Yeah. So that was rewarding.
Well, I didn't know you were gone for that long. When I saw that, I heard that, I was like, oh, I feel really bad. And then when I saw this poem came from it, it was like, well, that was it worked out. It was very justified.
It was good. It was. I'm happy with the trade-off at the end. So this is After the Divorce.
Okay. Ready, go ahead.
After the divorce. The crickets chirp into the morning's ombre sky. Most of the skinny pine trees have survived, but those that were plucked from the earth, their roots are now gray hairs. Hear their bodies chainsawed into tables as hornets zigzag above the upturned earth, looking for a home but settling for any mound of dirt. Millions without power, every tree combed of split ends. Were these the summer leaves dead before they hit the ground, or was it too much sun that baked them brown? Either way, life in earnest begins again. Pine cones pepper the sidewalk, pine needles toupee the bike path. The heron swoops down, her eyes circling what the lake has to give. Up! Her white wings stretch over the water, and this time she knows what she wants to eat. All of it is beneath her, now a brimming cup.
Yeah, very nice. Great poem there. Really is. I love all the musical, little internal rhymes going on.
You're trying to pull me towards the center, and sorry, I was like veering off as I read the poem.
No, it's all good. We're good. We have a good close enough to the mic.
But I enjoyed this one in particular because, so the title I actually got from Critique of the Week, because there was some poem, I forget which poem it was, but then I suggested that title to a different poem, and then I started this poem with a title like Hurricane or something. I was like, oh, that's too on the nose. I really like the best kind of the best thing would be if somebody could get to the extended metaphor without me directly telling them, you know, that it was the hurricane. Like, everybody can sense it's a hurricane. Though I'm from Florida, so I have a sense of hurricanes even when other people aren't thinking hurricanes. But it was fun to write.
Yeah, well, definitely. And I love to, you know, because most of those things came from either walks or bike rides.
I know, and then
so I saw the heron fly over. I remember that very well. And,
it is true. And then when we were riding our bikes on the bike path yesterday, and there were all the pine needles over it from the minimal storm damage that our area did incur, I said, "I'm telling you right now, I'm writing a poem about this.
Yeah,
I love these pine needles. They are reclaiming this path, and I love them, and they're going in a poem."
It felt kind of like you were calling it. So I
I was calling dibs on it.
Licking the last
I know. I was like, "Don't write a poem about that, Tim. That's my poem."
Yeah,
that's exactly. You're correct.
Well, I couldn't read that. So I'm working on. It's interesting because a lot of the things Chera was talking about today are things that I feel too. I'm kind of getting tired. I have a whole book of poems about like myself, kind of recently, that I'm working on getting out, but it's like a full thing and rounded and everything. And I'm kind of tired. So I'm working on this other thing.
I'm not tired of it. For the record.
I know, that's fine. But that Route 32 poem a couple weeks ago was from a new thing, and this is another one from a new thing I'm trying to play with a little bit.
Okay,
so
great.
Similar to Share a little bit. This is called "The Formation of Love."
Oh.
It's not really a love poem, don't
Oh
get
man!
Well, I mean, it kind of is, but not really. Okay, but not the way you think.
Okay.
It might be.
Ooh.
Okay. Anyway, this is "The Formation of Love." And anyway, there aren't enough people left to love, so we love what's left like they're people. A rock wren appearing in a pool of clean rain was an old friend coming home. The first green shoot of musk thistle pushing up through the black mat like a child's first step. In spring, the fields of fireweed and poodle dog were a rolling sea made of sunset that tossed the masts of the old oaks to and fro. Their waves were a lover's perfume. Even now, when we leave the shelter, the rows of corn and cabbage stand at attention like legions of troops, and we love them like a Caesar must have loved their perfection. But it's not only the life that we love. We love the mud in our boots and our boots full of mud, the soft threads of our shirts that are worn thin with this love. I bend down to a stone still half crusted in soot. The underside shows its diorite, a union of quartz and feldspar that formed an actual eon before we were born. Coming back. Yeah. Well, luckily that wasn't in the middle of a poem, but we lost the internet again. I think we might have some. It's AT&T here, and Wrightwood is a private company that never goes down. So
except.
Except for the massive power outage.
Except for exactly. I was going to say, but that's okay.
Yeah. So anyway, we're back. I guess it's a great, strong connection.
Yeah.
And yet occasionally it drops.
Yeah.
Apparently. But anyway, we are back. Thanks everybody for being here. Oh, we got to unmute for Zoom so that everybody can hear us on Zoom.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah. Well, no problem. But we are here. So thanks everybody for your patience as we got back online. Now let's go to the open lines portion of the show. Let's make sure with a little pause it's streaming. Yeah. Okay. So we're back. I think it's just local. I think we have a little connectivity issue.
Yeah. Okay.
Anyway, let's go to Jared Campbell first. His face is already up there on my Zoom. Hey Jared, how you doing today?
Doing all right. How are you?
Yeah, we're great. Yeah, good to see you.
Good to see you.
So what do you have to share with us today?
So mine is Overland Park, Kansas is like. Just telling you what it's like. So.
Well, very good. As I was going to say, this is one of the things about doing this episode. Or this prompt. It's so fun to hear where people live.
Yeah,
and
that
like
was what I always have my extra purpose, and I want to learn more about what everybody's environment is like.
Yeah, it makes it feel all the more like communal and community.
Yeah.
It's really fun to hear. So I'm looking forward to hearing this. Overland Park, Kansas. Never been there either.
Yep. Overland Park, Kansas is like a muggy evening with 3 fireflies. New car smell. The smell of fresh cut grass. The watching numbers smell of pumping gas. A large, air-conditioned library. Costco. A well-lit, starless night sky. Tadka dal with naan. An onion samosa. Ribs rubbed with brown sugar, paprika, cumin, and chili powder, smoked slowly. The smell of a rainstorm coming but a few miles away. the memory of peeking at a neighbor's test, the warmth of sunshine on your neck, the ostentatious leaking of a golf course irrigation line, cicadas buzzing at the starless blue.
Yeah, beautiful. Yeah, I
love all the details. Wow, that's so. Sorry for interrupting.
No, I mean that's what I was going to say.
Yeah.
All those details are wonderful in the sonnet form too.
Yeah, I feel like we all got to go there for a few minutes.
Yeah, we definitely did. Thanks, Jared. Yeah, this is going to be a fun episode.
Yeah. Great start.
Yeah, thanks.
Thank you.
Yeah, that was Jared Campbell with Overland Park, Kansas is like. Next, let's go to Dick Westheimer.
Hey, Tim and
Hey,
Katie.
Dick. Yeah, great to see you.
It's good to see you, and good to hear some details from your walks. That's
Yeah,
fun.
I know. I do feel like I was channeling your prompt poem more than I was aware. But it did. Your poem made me think, for those who don't know, Dick, of course, had the winning prompt poem of the month, and it was largely taking place as his morning run. And so we got some of that. So it's kind of a challenge to you to write a different poem that fit the prompt, right? Or did
Well,
you?
I did write a different prompt, and it did something magical, which is it's similar to my prompt poem, which after I wrote it, I started a little bit of being able to discern images internally. So it did some magic, like
Wow.
identifying. And this poem I have dispatched from the drying times. It hasn't really rained since the first week in May until the day after I wrote this poem.
Interesting.
So
I'm sure
I have
you made it rain, Dick.
Yeah.
yeah,
Make it
from
rain.
Ursula, yeah, make it rain. Ursula Le Guin had a short story about somebody who dreamed whose dreams were became reality. So that's what I'm feeling like with my poems. I have this uncanny power, and hopefully
I
the
don't
bad
know. There
guys
might be
don't get a
something to
hold of
that
me.
in this phenomenological
Yeah.
universe we're
Yep.
living in. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
All right.
So before I read it, it is a prose poem. It probably would be longer than a page if it were a lineated poem. So do you want me to
No, I
abbreviate?
think that's fine. You're
Yeah.
fine. It's not even the full, the full page. It's good.
Yeah. If we have
Okay.
to start curtailing that, we will in the future. We have our eye on you, Dick Westheimer.
Okay. Good. I'm glad you have your eye on me. So here we go. Dispatch from the drying times. It's orb weaver time, tree spanning, fly catching, spider time, when the woods should be lush as willows in spring time. Instead, so many summer leaves have lost their grip, lay stuttered and brown, like fallen moth's wings on the fallen ground. So dry that even weeds crawl for cover in this heat. I try to find relief in the pond, warm as piss, the neighbor says, and I'm wondering, why do the cack and calling Cooper's hawks sweep so low over the receding shore? I see now. The field mice have left their grind-dry burrows. The snakes have crawled from the creek, which is dry down to the stones. All these creatures sense where they can find a drink, and those hawks know more than I about the needs of small things. At least the crickets have found their song. Their singing is the reason for windows that open, even on nights too warm for sheets. Their stridatory organs call not just to their mates, but to me, and replace the ringing in my ears with a lull that allows me to tune out the burning I fear. Before I can join them and harmonize, I fall asleep, then wake to a small patter of rain, just a tease given small hope to the shallowest of roots. The thick pre-dawn air, soggy as my bedclothes, freights the full weight of skunk stench up through my window. My eyes sting and tear up before the coughing starts. But I am curiously drawn to it, much like I am to my own musk, and I am glad knowing that what will survive us all will be the crickets calling, the skunks and their celebratory smell, the snakes and their crawling, the rocks and their forever grind, and perhaps rain.
Oh, that's great. Dispatch from the Drying Times, and so much great imagery in that poem, and
All
and
the
having
smells.
again, I can see it, especially having been there. So thanks again,
I
Nick, for
can
inviting
smell
us to
it.
your farm last year.
Oh, and thank you for the prompt because it brought rain. Make it rain. There we go.
Yay! I'm very glad to hear that.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah,
I expect my percent of your crop. No.
I can't wait until the next prompt does something magical for us.
Aw.
Yeah,
great.
yeah, me too. Well, thanks so much for sharing that wonderful poem.
Thanks. Bye-bye.
It's Dick Westheimer with Dispatch from the Drying Times. Let's go to Nate Jacob next.
Howdy.
Hey, Nate, good to see you.
Good to be seen. It's good to see you too.
Nate, are you wearing your baseball shirt that you won in the contest? Did I see that right? Yes.
Yeah,
That's awesome.
that's nerdy, but I'll take it.
I would wear it every day, you know? Why pick any other shirt? That would be my
There's
question.
a chance I do.
That's true. Yeah. So what do you got for us this week, Nate?
All right. Well, I live in southwestern Idaho. It's high desert, and it is hot and dry this year. More hot and dry than normal. So hopefully you get a sense of that in this poem. I started off with the prompt trying to write something that sounded like a travel journal of some sort. I couldn't make it stick in a poetic way. So now it's just a poem that was prompted by the prompt.
All right.
That
Well,
works.
that is what we're looking at tonight.
We also accept your honesty.
Yes.
Too.
Titled Settling into Summer in Star, the name of my town. Imagine crossing these wide desert heights between the old unknown and every next day, sage and sun scrubbing you ruddy and dry, the rhythm of so many whys, wheres, and whens, pressing you forward toward groves along a river, curling out from below. From a sere rocky rise, old Moses would never have thought to tap twice. Why even bother? Godly trust giving way in the blaze to one hell of a thirst. And yet here we are, the heat weighing heavier by the year, smoke from the west peppering each breath with a taste of forest death. And the eyes we tended to always keep lowered are lower still, blood-lined and tear-wetted, as though we were only feeling the sense of doom, never engaging it as one, never opening ourselves to cooling heads prevailing, to the end of earth fire, to the honoring of this valley's less recent history, of deepest skies in every season and direction. These desert heights still spark hopes in us, still betray the endless width of possible horizons, still season us with the ideas of a better valley. Some look forward downriver for the way out. Others look to the past, upstream from current troubles, while here and now the river changes us. And this is our place in the world, all of our senses tuned to this moment, believing it will never change.
Yeah, that was wonderful. Settling into Summer in a Star. A great poem, I'd say, Nate, for the newspaper. Which, Nate was a guest on the Poetry Space last week. We were talking about alternate places to publish poems. And Nate's got a great story about publishing regularly, like a column in his local newspaper, how that came to be. And definitely a great poem.
And
for,
getting
that.
recognized in grocery stores occasionally.
That is true.
To bring
Beard
that
helps.
up. I love that detail so much. Now, every time I go into the grocery store, I'm like, maybe I should drop that I write poetry. Just kind of scatter it in the produce.
Well, we got to go to the local one. You get the cover of the magazine here.
That's true.
Do it.
That was so musical, Nate. It was really lovely.
Thank you.
Yeah, good stuff. They're going to love it.
They are.
They are. All right, take
Thanks,
care.
guys.
Thanks, Nate.
Thanks.
Yeah, that was Nate Jacob with Setting into Summer in Star. And if you'd like to check out that Poetry Space episode, just go to the Poetry Space, type that into iTunes or whatever, and you will find it.
And you'll find it. Yay.
Yeah.
Episode 70.
Episode 70,
Yeah.
the most recent as we speak. Let's go to Christiana Doucette next.
Hello.
Hi.
Hey, Christiana, great to see you.
Am I correct that it is your birthday today?
Happy
It
birthday.
is my birthday today, and
Yay.
I got a poetry acceptance this morning.
Yay!
Oh, wow,
That's so
excellent.
awesome.
It was very exciting. I'd read about people having that happen before, but it never had happened to me before.
Yay. And you celebrated your birthday in the coolest way by all month having a word to prompt yourself with, which I only sadly saw towards, I wish I'd seen July 1st, but hey, I'm glad I found it before the month is over, which is cool.
Fine.
Yeah. And today your word's birthday, right?
It is birthday. Yeah.
That's great.
I tried to put July sorts of things in there and also some of my favorite things.
Yeah.
And I've mostly stuck with short little things that I can write, but just to push myself.
Yeah. Well, it's a great idea. I love it.
Yeah, definitely. Very fun.
Yeah. I wrote a poem, and it wasn't this poem. That I thought was for the prompt, and then I went back to the prompt and I was like, oh, it's supposed to be a journalistic poem about where I live. So this one was written quickly. We've been celebrating today, and I feel like it's a little rougher than some of the other ones I've written, and hopefully you'll have a prompt someday that the other poem can be used for.
I'm sure I'll come up with something.
Yeah. And where is it that you're located there for this bridge building?
I'm in South Carolina.
Gotcha.
And this poem actually revolves around a bridge that my husband built in the backyard.
Oh,
when we
wow.
moved to our house, it looked like it had this little short backyard, which was great. We were fine with that. And then it turned out actually the property went all the way back, much further than we thought, to another fence. And it was completely covered over. You couldn't even see that there's a creek that goes through the back.
Oh,
you couldn't even see the creek. And we cleared out the thorns. We found a shopping cart down in there, all this different stuff. But what the difficulty is that there's this huge ravine between, the mostly flat part of the backyard and then the other side that's almost kind of like a little wood. And so my husband's built a bridge, and that's what this is based on.
Wow, very cool.
That's really cool.
Yeah, I wish I knew
Wow.
how to build a bridge.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Unexpected benefit to this house that we love so much. So this is bridge building. And afterwards, I'll try to put a picture of the bridge up on Twitter. I thought after I sent it, I was like, oh, I should have sent a picture with it so you can see. Bridge building. The first time he built the bridge on a pair of fallen tulip trees. They stretched long limbs across the chasm carved by the brushy creek. But the trees rotted as termites and beetle grub burrowed holes into the many-ringed trunks. It shook as kids raced across to the blueberry bush. It shuddered when they bounced, pouncing upon each other like wolf pups at practice. Then one day, as she stepped across, it cracked. The span sagged. So he took it down, frowning, and left it there next to the bank beside the bleeding heart. The kids trampled paths through her periwinkle, crushed the young fiddleheads just starting to uncurl, splashed in the mud to get to the unripe berries, carrying back buckets of tadpoles in the odd plastic bag. Each weekend, he pried up planks, saving the nails once sunk deep into the softened wood in a bowl for the next. Finally, he built again. 4 beams trustled between the ferns below to brace a pressure-treated footbridge. The baby was toddling, so he attached last year's leftover trellis to solid rails and led the family back over the ravine. She stopped midway across, elbows on the guardrail, and breathed in a rose of Sharon's first bloom, unbroken on the slope, a littering of tulip tree blossoms from the grandfather tree still stretching toward the sky, silver-starred minnows swish, uncaught beneath the solid boards, safe at last.
Oh, that was great. I was really taken there.
Yeah.
Transported to the whole scene. Excellent storytelling.
Yeah,
Bridge building.
Wonderful.
Yeah, thanks so much.
I look forward to seeing the bridge on Twitter.
Yeah, definitely. What is your Twitter handle so everybody can go look at your...
Oh, good.
Oh, it's, I think it's Doucette515. Let me double check. I always forget if it's Doucette515 or if it's Doucette515. It's one of the two. Doucette515.
There you go.
Nice.
Doucette515.
Okay.
Check out the bridge later, everybody.
Happy birthday.
Yeah, and happy birthday,
Thank you.
Christiana.
Bye.
Bye. Yeah, that was Christiana Doucette with Bridge Building. Next, let's go to Siobhan Brownlee, as it's getting late there in France. Sometimes I always remember, we better get to the people that are
Go
far
over to
away.
France, yeah.
Exactly. Hey, Siobhan.
Hello everyone. So I'd already written for an earlier prompt about where I live now, which is in France. So I decided that was when we had the prompt about the street. And so I decided to write about a place where I used to live, So prior to France, I lived in England for 17 years.
Wow.
And
You've been all over.
Yes.
It's impressive. Yeah. Wow.
It's a strange life I've had. So I was in Manchester, a very big city in the north of England. And I also reference in the poem My Cat, because prior to England, I was in Australia for 15 years, and I brought my cat from Australia to England. And the poem is called Daventfield Grove. That's the name of the street that I was living in Manchester. So I'll read it out. A nippy breeze is playing down the street of identical red brick terraced houses, unused chimneys, arches over doors, satellite dishes, gentrify these Victorian workers' cottages once crowded by huge families of squealing children who had no bathrooms. Hygiene has been added as extensions in the backyards. Front gardens are pocket patches. Coronation Street voices of Iba Gum sound as neighbours chat across picket fences. After months of cold and wet pavements and wind gusts that turn your umbrella inside out, faint rays of sun pierce the dullness, calling. On the doorstep of number 3, a goddess preens, elegant black limbs and slitted green eyes. The fluffy tagged tortoiseshell of number 7 darts across the ground. Thomas, when will you too gingerly sniff daffodil stalks? Black and white tiger inhabitant of number 9, who has indeed had many lives. A tropically born puss avid of lizards, once a warm night hunter prowling, now you stay indoors with your mistress in these gas spoiler heated climes, curled into a cosily snoring ball. You are waiting, I know, for a rare few days of a summer heat wave recalling your life's start, and then you will venture out among red bricks and picket fences into the grove.
Oh, that's sweet. Very vivid poem again from Siobhan Brownlee, Daventfield Grove. Love the address to turn at the end.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, beautiful poem. Thanks for sharing that, Siobhan.
Okay, thank you. Thank you all.
Yeah, Siobhan Brownlee with a Daventfield Grove. Let's go to Douglas Silver next.
Hi, Tim and Katie. How you doing?
Hey, Douglas.
How are you?
Great to see you.
Good to see you and all the poets. I'm doing well. Thanks, Katie. I sent Hi Bun in. I think, I should know. Yes, it's entitled Attendance Policy.
Ah, okay.
Nice.
So, and yes, it's a Hi Bun. Attendance Policy. You notice there are no children here, no toys on the floor, no high-pitched laughter or crying, no crayon drawings on the fridge. You ask, you don't like kids? Yes, we like kids, I reply, more than adults. I was a public high school teacher for almost 30 years. She teaches elementary. We just don't have any of our own. Then you notice there's no television, but books, lots of books. It's quiet, even though it's the city on its very edge. Mornings we can hear the humming of the highway below, the scoldings of airplanes above, coming in for a landing when the wind is right or wrong. So many people moving about, but not us. We've been here a while, and although we dream of the many possible elsewheres, we haven't found a better forever place. Not for us, at least not yet. And room, you say, who built such a tiny home? True, it's the smallest house on the block. 1 bedroom, 1 bathroom, no basement, no attic. It's all we could afford at the time, not so long ago. But it suits us, keeps us close, almost always in the same room, parallel playing. While it was being built, squeezing between 2x4s, stepping over holes in the floor, she asked, is this it? That's all there is, I almost sang. So let's break out the booze and have a ball, if that's all there is. Then we danced, we haven't stopped. Where what isn't getting in its own way, leaving room for what's to come. Thanks, everybody.
Oh, that's such a
that
sweet
is
poem.
so
That really
sweet.
is. Aw.
Thank you. That's our home. My wife and I, Monica.
Oh,
Yeah, thanks so much
that's
for sharing
wonderful.
that.
Thank
Yeah,
you.
yeah, such a
Thank
sweet
you all.
poem,
Thanks,
Douglas.
everybody.
Yeah, Attendance Policy by Douglas Silver.
Aw.
Let's go to Mike Bales next.
This is a big literary weekend. I've spent the weekend in in Iowa City for a writers' conference, and
Uh-huh.
we had an open mic last night. And I read one of my best short stories. I'm a little crusty around the edges right now. See, here's my T-shirt. You can read it.
Nice. Rocking the T-shirts tonight.
Yeah, nice, Mike.
Great.
Yeah, for sure.
My other ones it's been 30 years since I've been there for a writers' conference. The other ones I kind of had to throw away because I outgrew them, when I stopped running and became more sedentary. Technically, I live in Rock Island, but my post office is in Davenport. I stayed on the side because a friend wanted me to, but I fell out of touch with her. This is called After the Storm. Fallen branches litter darkened streets as I drive past neighbors' houses, as a steady rain falls and a tree trunk blocks a road. I heard that a tornado swept through the countryside, south of town, but I know it's this town that's dying. This town has been dying for 40 years after the Farmer Works, a tractor factory closed and hundreds of people lost their jobs. The town tried and tried to recreate itself, where people danced and sang in bars in the district, but now the still Ped Mall offers a faint glimmer of what it used to be. A disheveled man inside a gambling joint talks to himself and pulls a metal arm, while the city whispers its tales of gangsters who once occupied the town. Lights flash as if the carnival has come to town, but the residents have stayed home. A man calls out his incantations, and the music plays through the night when either he finds or loses his fortunes and dreams.
Oh, yeah, great portrait of the town.
Yeah.
Mike. Yeah.
Okay,
yeah.
thanks.
Thanks.
Thanks so much. Feel like I've been there now.
Yeah.
It's kind of dumpy, but it's got a lot of personality to it, Rock Island.
Yeah, it reminds me of home up in Western New York.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, it definitely does. Love it. Thanks, Mike.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah, there was Mike Bales with After the Storm. Next, let's go to Carla Schwartz, who hasn't been on a bit. We were just talking about that.
I was saying, we haven't seen Carla in a while before the show. I hope she comes back. And here you are.
I've been traveling. And so my home, when I wrote this poem, was in a camper van on Cape Cod. And so that's what I did. And I wrote a Haibin, and let me get it up. And yes, I've missed everybody, but I've been on the water and on the road.
Wow. Yeah, I didn't know you do that. I mean, I knew the boat and that you traveled around that way, but you travel around by land too. You're just like you're a Navy SEAL or something. That's really neat, Carla.
Right. We met somebody like that, and he called himself a submariner, just so you know.
Oh, wow.
Okay. Van life, one night, Vanna White. Name of the camper. In our camper van, to get into bed, I have to back in, park my rear through the aisle between our beds, pushing my butt up to the mattress, which triggers my nerves. Pain, piles of it, courses down my leg to my ankle and returns. I lie and wait for the heat pump's cool air to reach me from the far end of the van. I unspool my sheets, then my body onto the length of the bed and lie still, breathe deep breaths, listen as I try to quiet my mind. Inhale, exhale. Inhale, sleep has left the van. I can hear the sound of the fan, the steady pump of the compressor. The blue lights of the battery prompt my eye mask. Yesterday's blisters begin to itch under the bandages. Each movement welcomes more minutes of no sleep. To stretch out, I must press my feet against the refrigerator. 12 jars, disciples of the kitchen, spice drawer. After some hours, with sleep still elusive, I lift my legs to the air before swinging them around to the floor. 3 steps and a 180 to sit down to pee in the composting toilet at the end of our aisle. Inhale, exhale, the scent of urine and vinegar. Cocoa choir, night angels sing, the composting toilet. To return to bed, butt up, nerve pain down, swing legs around to lie down. Inhale, exhale, hope once more for rest until early morning when finally sleep comes. Rest, sleepless rest, restless sleep wrestles me down. Wake to taste the sour workings of the night. Then the mouth rinse tang as I swish, then spit into the sink. The one thing in the van I designed, the elegance of the single faucet and drain for shower and sink. I switch the gulper pump on. The steady slurp draws me from exhaustion. I smile to the day, its slice of perfection. Lying down, the truth sits up.
Love that last haiku.
Yeah, that last haiku especially is amazing. Yeah.
Yeah, great stuff. Thanks for sharing that, Carla.
Great to see you again. Now we know what you've been up to.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, we really were. This
we
morning,
were
like,
talking. Where's Carla Schwartz?
Yeah. Well, great to see you having a great time and enjoy that van.
Yeah.
Van of White. That's wonderful.
Yeah, Van of White is such a good name.
Yeah, very cool. That was Carla Schwartz with a van life. I was hoping when you did this prompt that we get a lot of Hyben.
Yeah, I was thinking too.
Yeah. It's kind of a nice way to go, Hyben really worked. Let's go to Chelsea McClellan next.
Hello.
Hi.
Hey, Chelsea.
How are you all? I know you've already answered that. It's good to see you.
Good to see you.
Good to see you.
My poem tonight is about the soil in Ohio, specifically around the clay soil.
Yeah, interesting. Mm-hmm.
In my home as I see it. So my poem is Hope in the Fields of Ohio. To the west, beans. To the south, beans. To the east, beans. And north are the stubs of what once was wheat, now a desert of sharp straws, foreshadowing the brown, which always comes. Our dirt is a broken vase. Every year the wheel turns, the potter wets his hands and presses in to flatten the clay into a dense lump. On the main country road, cars fly, which is to say 59 in a 55, but a curious slowing happens between the bean fields. Eyes wander through our yard, through apple trees and elders, all the gaps filled with color, ferny leaves and massive ones, towering yellow mullein flowers, and a shovel deep in fluffy soil. Last year's sunchoke stalks, broken easily over my knees, tossed under the trees as mulch. Horseradish leaves large enough to mulch the soil while still alive. To walk from the apple trees to the hazelnuts is a winding path, though many times I've been told there's only one row of trees, but I see a forest in these fields.
Oh, that was wonderful. I love that line. Our dirt is a broken vase.
Yeah, that's
so vivid.
spectacular.
Yeah, really great stuff. Thanks for sharing that. Another poem that just took me there.
I know. Wow. I'm getting like lost in all these poems too. Like when it ends, I'm surprised and like, what? Where are we?
Yeah, thanks, Chelsea. That was great.
Thank you. Good night, everyone.
Hi.
That was Chelsea McClellan with Hope in the Fields of Ohio. Nice sound of the title, too.
Yeah.
Music there.
Mm-hmm.
Let's go to Roderick Deasy next.
Hi. Good evening. Hello, Tim and Katie. I listened to your episode on alternative places to publish poetry. And I found this great place where they send you a prompt and you send them a poem in and you read it. And then it's up on back. Next week it's up on YouTube and it's there forever.
That's another
we should look into that and plug it on the poetry space.
Last time I looked, my last one had 400 views and counting. You can't beat that. Okay. My poem was called Interviewing the Poet. I sent it in twice in a confusing way, so you got it.
Yep, got it right here.
Okay, cool. Here we go. Interviewing the Poet. The poet lives in a flat-roofed brick building in the heart of a historic city in Maryland. As he reads his recent poems to me, his apartment quietly transforms into a book-lined study in a thatched cottage in England, with flowers crowding the windows, lupins, pinks, columbines, hollyhocks, roses, and night-scented stock. He wants to show me why he lives here, so we set out through his real garden, lots of pots jostling in the concrete alley, houseplants on vacation outside for the warmer months, many peace lilies. Cardinals and doves talk to us from the ivy hedge. We cross the street, walk south for 3 minutes, and come to a wide creek, edged by red brick paths, gloriously crammed full of water lilies, with a range of colours and varieties, whites, vivid blues, yellows, and brilliant shades of pink. There are a couple of plants from the Amazon with floating leaves 3 feet across. Large carp swim around. This is one reason, the poet says. Not far from here is another. We cross the first bridge, climb partway up a hill, and arrive at the walls of an old stone building. Fire took the roof, he explains. Then the owner let the shell be converted into an artwork and the city's best performance venue, with trees in the audience and stars in the ceiling. I perform beat poetry here every October with my drummer and bass player. You should come. It's free. We talk about free shows as we walk back. Then somehow I catch the distinctive smell of night-scented stock outside his apartment. Poets are the worst paid of all creators, he says, which is why so many of them wrap themselves in the warm blankets of academia. No one writes poems for the money. Hey, money is fine, but I'm rich in words, he says, as he shakes my hand goodbye.
That was wonderful, Rod. That was Rod DC with Interviewing the Poet. And where is that? What city is that, Rod?
Is it Frederick?
Frederick, Maryland.
Yeah,
gotcha.
I've been to Frederick. I used to live in Silver Spring, and I really liked going to Frederick.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, very nice. Well, now I want to go visit too. Thanks, Rod. Always a pleasure.
Thanks.
Yeah, there's Roderick DC with
Thank you.
Interviewing the Poet. TR Paulson is here.
Yeah.
Hey, TR.
Hi, how are you?
Yeah, good. Great to see you.
Yeah.
I'm on a single day off between a 60-hour work week last week and a 60-hour work week forthcoming.
Oh, wow. Oh, the Prime Day. I know you hate those.
Oh gosh. Oh no.
So I'm saying things that are incoherent, and I am confused. And I just got two publications of 4 poems published. So it's been a busy week.
Wow. Well, congratulations.
Yeah. It's not 4 poems per week. Trust me. It's dry spell, dry spell, dry spell, and then all at once, and then. So don't hate me for getting 4 poems at once. Anybody.
So what have you got for us tonight?
So this one is it's in response to full confession. I actually intended it in response to a different prompt from another my friend Kelly Grace Thomas, who is also a Rattle contributor, has this thing on Substack where she's doing a month of prompts to make more magical poems.
Nice.
And since I desperately need something to hold me accountable when I'm this busy, I am committed, except I'm 3 days behind, but I'm committed to following that. So her prompt was write about routine and make it magical. And then when I responded to her prompt, I realized it also fits this prompt. So it's like
great.
I don't know, a prompt hybridization or whatever you call it.
Well, that's great. And a sonnet too. We always love sonnets.
Nice.
Yeah, I revert to sonnets when I'm tired. Even in summer, I watch ribbons of fire on my commute home, sunset wide beyond the ridge of redwood hills. Everything burns. 1 foot curls its toes. 1 hand tingles. My fridge waits a cave emptied by overtime, and mold teases from corners of my shower. Scattered fragments of unwritten things. I hold on. Here the curve of clouds is all that matters. And for a moment, I wish I were still at work, with a few stops left to deliver after my last break. There, atop a hill near Bear Gulch Road, I'd savor each sliver of now. Beyond my aching hands, muscles, and mind, the sky and ocean still tussle.
Excellent. Love the use of line breaks, playing with the rhymes there.
Yeah.
It's really nice cutting the poem up. And we get that Bear Gulch Road, which we've heard about before.
Yeah.
Looking forward to hearing more of it, too.
Yeah, my buddy that reads some of my poems says, you write about Bear Gulch a lot. Maybe that's my next chapbook.
Yeah, I think so. Well, thanks for sharing that.
When I enter it in the contest, you'll know who wrote it, right? So
that's
that
true.
That's
the problem.
Make it Gulch Bear Road.
Yeah.
All right. Thanks so much, Tiara.
Thanks.
Great to see you.
Thanks, guys.
Yep.
Bye.
Yeah, Tiara Paulson with Even in Summer. Let's go next to... we had a first-time caller here. Let's go to Tina Dennett-Claw next. Notice that out of the corner of my eye. Hey, Tina.
Hi. You know, I wrote this poem before my aunt entered comfort care. So it's a little hard for me to read now. I don't know if someone else could read it for me.
Yeah, let me find it. Did you email it or did you?
Yeah, I emailed it.
Okay, let me. Do you see it? Oh, there it is.
There,
Okay,
yeah.
I got it. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, we'll definitely read it for you. No problem at all, Tina. Definitely my pleasure. Okay. Yeah. So this is again Tina Dennett-Claw with one more. Make sure I'm going for the right one. Yeah. Okay. So this is Tina Dennett-Claw with one more. We'll go like this. Just leave Tina's name up.
Yeah.
This is one more. Aunt Shirley's pecan pie, luscious, soft sweetness, crispy pecans, tenderly cradled in crust. Parents, siblings, aunts, uncles, cousins sit, gathered onto couch, soft chairs, hard chairs, floor or stand, wherever. Scents of roasted meat and cinnamon cake waft in air among them. Laughter and teasing and storytelling, family with Grandma in her living room. Dad lifts his elbows, leans back in chair, clasps hands behind his head, gray-blue eyes glint, pleased. He tells us, "Oh, that's good, Aunt Shirley's pecan pie." Shirley perks across the room. "Do you want another piece?" Dad signals positive, spreads hand in upward motion. "You bet. I thought it was all gone." It is. Shirley hurries from her seat, whirls around toward kitchen. Hem of dress flies out behind her. This won't take long. Shirley bakes a whole new pie. Her sister's husband wants another bite. Oh, such a touching poem, especially knowing the backstory too. Thanks so much for sharing that, Tina. Really moving, and best wishes to the whole family.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, that was Tina Bennett-Claw with one more. Let's go next to what did I do now? I'm clicking weird things today. Bishwajit Mishra. Let's go to Biz.
Hey, good evening.
Hey, Biz. Good to see you.
I got in a little late. I was out of town, but I got most of it. And
well, excellent. Yeah.
15,
you were busy at the rodeo.
Definitely. Where were you?
No, that's gone. That's gone. But, it's been a hot day, but we went out with another family, just picnic kind of thing.
Yeah,
so
great. Well, as you explained before, summer is the time you do things when you live up
north.
Yes. Yeah. Well, I'm glad you are. So you got Arrival is the poem today.
Arrival, yes. Yeah. I don't know if technically it meets the criteria for.
Well, if it was inspired by the prompt, it meets the criteria.
All right, skirting the line here.
Okay, Arrival. It's in the cell phone parking lot that we hear the plane has arrived. About 30 minutes late. It's past an hour and a half past midnight. And we drove for about 30 minutes to be here. I'm in the passenger seat in my car on one of the infrequent occasions. I like driving my car. When we were out on our way, roads looked different, and we were trying to make sure that we didn't miss our exit. The airport road, which was being built forever, actually it's called a trail, so that should be okay. All traffic lights gone, even construction signs were gone. And I recalled how I had missed an exit once when construction was not fully complete, but some sections were open, and I was so used to the earlier exit on the left, which I didn't like, especially at night. I missed the new one on the right. Had to go on, turn around to come back. While most drivers prefer no lights at night on empty roads, I rather like traffic lights at night and no lights during the day, nor construction signs, which I absolutely agree with all to hate during the day. But at night, so late, so empty, I need something. I need my walls, my fences, my lawn space before the fence, and even walking the green patch between the road and sidewalk. If they could put some sound signals, like a loud wake-up shout at the lights, at least at night, that would be great. Being a chronic insomniac, I would love to have the possibilities open to catch up on my missing sleep anytime and any place, more so in open, solitary spaces. I could have been a good hunter if I were not a vegetarian. Driving back, I interrupt a conversation to show my co-passengers a billboard of a realtor whose billboards usually seemed in and around the airport. But we didn't see any on our drive to the airport today. Was that done on purpose after the construction to get the most eyeballs? Though I don't know how, unless the city gets more arrivals than departures.
Oh, very nice. Another one where I could really envision it because I've seen so many of your haiga with your backgrounds. Really, it was like sort of piecing like snapshots together.
That's true. That's what I'm doing too when he reads. I didn't even realize that till now. It's funny.
Very fun, but I think that definitely fits the prop too.
Mm-hmm. I think so too. I'm glad I was prepared to admonish you.
Thank you very much. I saw Katie's poem, and that's why I said I was dilly-dallying. I don't know.
Oh yeah, you did say that you weren't necessarily going to write one. That made me happy.
That should work. I mean, I can push it through. And there's a little bit of opening. Let's just push that through.
Well, I'm glad you went ahead and wrote it.
Yeah, definitely. Me too. Thanks, Biz.
I would be here to, hear others too. That's more fun than reading, right?
It is.
And like Rod said, you talked about that publication. He's right. There are 100, 200 views, and you get to live perform. It's more than publication. What do you want for publication?
Well, I agree. That's what I do with my poems.
Yeah.
And you go and reading and seeing it again and again, right? So it's very lovely.
Excellent. Well, thanks so much. I appreciate that.
Glad to hear that.
Yeah, thanks to you.
Yeah, thanks, Chris. That's Bishop Mishra with Arrival, a poem that definitely fits.
Mm-hmm.
Let's go to Annette Malik next.
Hi there.
Hey, Annette, great to see you.
Hey, you too. I've got another Hyben today.
Great.
Yeah, Hyben are great. They just are. It's like like design. It forces the structure into a good poem.
I was hoping for a lot of Hyben. I thought I would end up writing one, and then this morning, I actually did write one, but then I like my poem I wrote this morning better.
Yeah. You know what else is true? I kind of noticed I was doing this, but didn't realize. I read a lot of Frog Pond on the plane. Like when I'm flying, something you can like just pull out on your phone really easy, PDFs. And I read like all the haiku and all the issues, and I just like skipped over the Hyben for so many years that they're like all the Hyben and all the issues of Frog Pond are like available to read for me, and it's really fun reading
great.
through all the Hyben. But
Fun.
anyway,
yeah.
So what have you got for us, Hammett?
Okay, I don't know how journalistic it is, and it's sort of turned into a little bit of a poet's respond at the same time. Okay. Pop goes the diesel train passing through Picton. The pop, pop, pop of a motorbike waiting to cross Prince Street Bridge pricks the calm of dusk, the sound like plastic bullets. We drivers of Picton wait to see if the first to cross will signal thanks. For some, it's the index finger, others wave a whole hand. This time it's a wave, an eager one, as another across the globe waves at an ear confused by a pop, pop, pop. The colony of flying foxes in the gorge under the bridge, 20,000, the council says, and it does smell like 20,000, rises at the sound. A dark cloud in the darkening sky, screeching its way to telegraph whatever flying foxes screech about to other corners of the night. Around the world, TVs and radios break news, while the flapping beats the skies of Picton. The shit of flying foxes is black, and it can eat through the paint of your car. You can see their path by following the big black splotches. Thunder brings acid, rain.
Yeah, wonderful. I always love Hybens, and I'm so glad you mentioned that was from Poetry Spunk. So thinking, why have I read this before?
Yes.
And then I realized I just did read it yesterday.
Yeah.
And I love that title especially, and it's just a great use of the form too. Thanks so much for sharing that, Hammett.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, that was Annette Malik with "Pop Goes the Diesel Train Passing Through Picton."
Great sounds.
Yeah, great sounds. All the P's there.
Yeah,
and
I love
then,
it. It's my favorite
the
alliteration
in the poem.
Is the P sound. Yeah.
Really took the use all your senses seriously.
Yeah, definitely. It definitely counts, Hammett. Yeah.
All right, and next, let's go to Chelsea McGlynn.
Hi.
Hi.
Hey, Chelsea.
So, like Rod, I also live in Frederick, Maryland.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
You guys cross paths at all? Going to poetry readings, anything like that?
No, we haven't.
Get that going.
Yeah.
But I attached pictures to my brow.
Oh my gosh! Is this the same thing that Roderick mentioned?
Yeah, this is what Rod was writing about.
That's
wild.
Wow, and look at
there's
that.
water lilies and bridges over crop, and all year round there's festivals. In the winter there's like ice sculpture.
Yeah.
In the summer
I
there's
wanted to move
dance
there,
and
Maryland. Yeah.
Yeah, well, maybe we should.
And then the second picture is Area B, which is just outside the city, but it's important to know that Carroll Creek flows through Area B first prior to reaching the city. And it's part of a military installation nearby. So that will come up in my poem.
Interesting details. Yeah, okay.
So Tonkas for home, Frederick, Maryland. Slick fish slip under dawning lilies, thumbprint ripples where once I touched and was touched back. Area B, old farmland abandoned, waste leaches into wells, our own Superfund site. Canal and creek, water reflecting heat, stroked skies, all those blues, guitarists strum.
Oh wow, it's kind of ominous looming there.
Yeah.
Really interesting, that super fun site. Yeah, really interesting.
We have a Superfund site due to waste and disposal being poorly done back in the 40s through 60s. And the creek, the beautiful creek that we love, flows through that area before coming into the city.
Oh, yeah. That's definitely something to be aware of. Thanks for sharing that.
Yeah. You're welcome.
Yeah, that was Chelsea McClellan with where'd the poem go? Tonkas.
We know
for home.
that.
Yeah. Thanks so much for sharing that.
Yeah.
Or Chelsea McGlynn, sorry.
Oh.
Sorry, Chelsea.
Sorry.
Chelsea McGlynn.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. Let's go to Brian O'Sullivan next.
Hello.
Hey,
Good to
Brian.
see you.
Yeah, great to see you.
Same. So I have another Hyben, or attempt at a Hyben. It kind of needs a sparkier title, but this is what I got so far.
Oh, this is interesting. With like I see already a picture, kind of an image in the middle of something. Yeah.
Yeah, you'll see. It's a block quote from an erasure poem, and that is part of this sort of installation called the Commemorative to Enslaved People on my campus, St. Mary's College of Maryland in St. Mary's County, Maryland.
Big Maryland episode.
Yeah, really. How far from Fredericksburg is that, or whatever it was?
And Chelsea also mentioned the same campus last week, which was okay. It's called Before Sabbatical. It's a better title. Driving south on 3 Knots Road, past Thai Inter-Restaurant and the Toyota and Honda dealerships in the Naval Base, I stop at the St. James to pick up a coffee and a bacon and egg and an English muffin. The stack of ungraded paper stuffed into my laptop bag is crying out, but I need some help banishing the bleariness first. I pull out of the parking lot onto Mattapanai, the oldest street in Maryland, tree-canopied and lined with green fields and woods, heading towards campus. I stop at the playing field parking lot instead of going straight to my office, wanting a little reprieve from those papers. I get out with my coffee cup and brown bag and slide onto a bench. The Commemorative, just a few yards away, draws my attention, and after breakfast I walk over to pay my respects. It's a small skeletal cabin on this site of enslavement, and its outer walls are covered with poetry that Quentin Baker hewed out of the archived documents of slaveholders. I can see my own dim reflection on the wall behind the names of the enslaved. Looking up, I read some of the words on the east roof. A complex dock, confined, carried by law through the unreason of time, a copper-colored apprehension, who said run first, who called midnight home, that thick scar, that reward. That complex dock and the shades of those who bore the thick scar and said run follow me through a day of grading and classes, conferences, and committee meetings. At the end of the day, instead of heading straight to my car, I head down the cobblestone path, past Lucille's poems set on little pedestals around the pond, down towards the river that brought the enslaved to this prison and that held them in the dock when they escaped. I smell the marshy air and marsh and osprey land. I pass the hidden grave and the memorial garden and reach Church Point. It's quiet here tonight, and the night music of bullfrogs and cicadas has not begun. A few scattered beer bottles from the weekend don't break the mood, as I look at the blue estuarial waters dotted with kayaks and sailboats, and as I look past them to the emerald lawns on the other side. The day ends in a burnt orange spectacle, and by the time I drive home, the Commemorative is lit like a beacon. Jellyfish in cold embrace, spectral witnesses.
Oh, really cool. Great use of the haiku with the Hyben form,
what a
too.
leap.
Yeah, definitely. I love that.
Mhm.
Before sabbatical.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thanks so much for sharing that, Brian.
A pleasure. Thank you.
Yep. Brian O'Sullivan with Before Sabbatical. A few poets left. Laura Berg is here.
Hi.
Hey, Laura.
Hi.
Hi. Oh my gosh, we started in those incredible depictions of Texas, and we've been crisscrossing the country, and there's so much vibrancy, so much life.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it's people, love where they live.
Mhm.
Yeah, it's really neat.
So I was trying, but actually little pieces of myself are scattered all over the world. So that's what this poem's about. Yeah.
Oh, interesting. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Laura's Kit for Self-Assembly.
I love that title. That's great.
See my intestines being treated by nuns at a clinic near Mombasa, bee-eaters hovering in the windows. And there my hunched shoulders in a men-only elevator deep in the kingdom, the men gazing up, adjusting their keffiyehs, wishing to be anywhere else. See my right hand still tipping my parents' ashes into the waterfall atop an upstate glen. Aye, there's my left hand stung by a slap for writing in a reception book at a hostel in Seville, back when left hands were still for the devil's work. I need that hand. Yes, those are my lips getting kissed, not just in a sweat-filled high school green room or college dorm balcony, smell those magnolias, or on cobblestone streets trapped in mist. I need those lips back, The way I used to need my suitcase and I'd wait and wait by the carousel until the lights went out. Remembering those starship sailors jammed in transport their atoms onto planets. This has happened to me, and as a serial voyager, I'm complicit. Last night I dreamed I became a giant magnet to attract my atoms back, but they remained éparpillés, at least the ones in Nice, all strewn. And this morning, here in a cozy brick suburban house, typing in view of a fig tree, I keep reeling in missing bits of myself from there.
Oh, that was just wonderful. I love the conceit and then the movement through it. It's really,
so
really well done,
beautiful.
Laura.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, thanks so much for sharing that. It was Laura Berg with Laura Kit for Self-Assembly. It's a great title, too.
Yeah.
Let's see. And Rachel Valenzuela is here.
Hi.
Hi, Rachel. Great to see you.
It's good to see you guys too. Thanks for the critique last Friday.
Oh, definitely. Yeah, I hope it was helpful. It was really fun.
It was a fun experience. Yeah.
Oh, great. Yeah, great to hear that.
So I also made a high bin.
Great.
I couldn't decide between, like, I wrote this like historical like timeline about my city, and it was just like way too long. So I decided, and I wrote a whole bunch of haikus, so I figured smushing them together would be a good form. So
yeah, great idea.
Okay, so it's called Moreno Valley Historical Society Adopt City Street. Forecast: smoldering, humidity low, nosebleeds likely, shades of brown and chaparral on jagged granite slopes just north of town, where ashen landscapes linger underfoot. The dusty trails now overgrown with invasive mustard specks. Don't fret. Delicate works of art are currently on display behind the restoration and progress signs, courtesy of UC Riverside, and all the volunteer history buffs who preserve our sprawling streets. If late at night you hear a clop followed by a booming crash, rest assured it's only the local herd of garbage thieves. Wild burro sighted, suspects last seen galloping in stone-washed velvet. It's just kind of a goofy one.
No, I love that. It's so much fun. I always love a fun poem, and that was very fun.
Yeah, very fun.
I love the way you moved into the haiku.
Yeah.
And another place that I'm very familiar with, they're just down the hill, Moreno Valley from Wrightwood, our other location. So I can really imagine that very clearly, too. Thanks for sharing. Yeah.
Great, thanks.
Yeah.
I think wild burros should be in more poems in general,
They
too.
should.
I enjoy their appearance.
They should be in more cities too. I love them. They're so fun.
That's right. We're going to have to go down and see them.
Yeah, Box Springs Reserve is a great spot. There's always tons
you know
saw
what? Yeah, I was driving. One time there was like a traffic accident on the freeway, and I cut through like a hilly area, and they were everywhere. We were like, what happened? Did like some farm like lose its gate or something? And I guess they were just wild. That is so cool. They were everywhere. Like we had to drive so slow and kind of like weave through. They were just like in the middle of the road.
Weaving through the wild
The kids loved it. Yeah, they really did.
That's really neat.
Yeah, it's so fun, and they're really like city donkeys. So they have like they're not afraid of you at all. Like they'll just like
that
your
is
car
neat. That sounds like a little
move.
field trip.
That's great. Yeah.
It's pretty fun. Highly recommend. Don't feed them. Don't feed them.
I'll try not to. I have a problem with that.
Thank you.
Well, thanks, Rachel.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Thanks. Bye.
Bye.
That was Rachel Valenzuela with Moreno Valley Historical Society Adopt City Street. It's a very fun poem there. I love closing up the Zoom on that. Let's see if we've got some like Ted Guevara going on too. We usually do. And there's Ted Guevara. Got a picture. And this is a familiar picture. I've seen this before because it's someplace.
Well, to me, this looks like Tallahassee, but you have yet to go to Tallahassee, so you're not seeing it. But it is like live oaks overstretching over a road. And to me, there's a very specific road in Tallahassee that I make a point to always go down because anytime you can drive under a canopy of trees, that is preferable.
It definitely is. I think maybe like I've used this stock photo before.
Oh. It's like waxing poetic about the place itself, and you're like, this is a stock photo I've seen before. You've seen a lot of stock photos.
I have seen a lot of stock photos.
But Ted always picks good pictures.
He does. Always interesting. I have no idea. I always am like, how does this relate to a poem,
I
Ted?
know.
But let's see.
He always is planting a mystery for us.
He is. Distribution center. Trees shake hands in my hometown. They gave up making rifle stocks for the reason it hollowed them so. In 1935, they began feeling full again, and in June 1946, they swallowed antacids, for trees, of course. Then paper became a thing, social media for the 50s, but the trees were mindful. Each oversaw what was written on their skin, yet vile words penetrated, and vile memos stretched out to their limbs. In 1980, the national election saturated to their roots from 516 miles away. The trees discovered it's not distant enough. Vile reconnected with a gun stock they've made. In 2024, trees still sprawl in my hometown, but they bow in tree conscience. Heaviness on a product a sniper's skim, when all through their admonishing branches float a breeze of compassion, change and clasp. Very interesting poem there, Ted. Where do you think that is? I mean, assume, we got a little hint. A certain distance, I assume from Washington, D.C.
Yeah.
So
maybe it's also in Maryland, since Maryland was the
Maryland is a popular
state
place.
Of the night.
Yeah. Well, I'm sure in the chat right now, it's hard to
everybody
jump
else
over.
Knows but us.
Well, I'm sure Ted's telling everybody
Yeah.
what to say. So if you want to find out, if you're only listening, go to the YouTube channel, check out the chat, which even though it disappears for a little bit, comes back like in 12 hours or something. So you can see the chat and what everybody was saying. All right. And then let's see if there's anybody else who is here and would like to share but couldn't. Very nice. Let's see. Let's read it. Susan Talley has got a city block. Let's read those. Why not? Let's read Susan Talley. A city block. I am cloaked inside dusk, the mesmerized stillness. I need to study sparrows, their temporary shelter. This stiff, shabby, chic house has a stone garden, but limited foliage, minus the fountain. Behind them, windows shuttered with gray, permissive absence. I love their modest belonging, that touch of stardust, now a glimmer. I love the two shifts in that poem. I love the I need to study sparrows, and then the touch of stardust.
Yeah.
An interesting poem. Thanks for sharing that stuff with Susan Talley with a city block. And Jerome Krajnak is here. Jerome Krajnak. Let's see. Yeah, Mountain Internet is sketchy, Jerome says. Again, no Zoom. You may read the poem if you choose, says Jerry. So here you go. Two old cats toward evening. Okay, here we go. Two old cats toward evening. I watch over my domain from this seat, the throne he created, towel atop his gateways to art. Joyce's Ulysses here on the corner of his desk. I press my muzzle to the window, surprised by its gray reflection. The sun sets somewhere behind all those trees. Can't see it, but out there, hummingbirds sip their final drops of sugar water. Neon finches stop for thistle. Bats swoop at the surface of the pond. I sniff, can't locate their musk, try to tell him, but he keeps pecking those little keys, and I prowl the bush and leap on the backs of wildebeests, zebras. I'm lord of the realm, jump from the desk to the study's floor, roam to the kitchen, check the larder, roar my displeasure. Unacceptable. Scatter friskies, barely covers the bowl's naked bottom. I rush toward his ankles, petition this unaware, ignorant god who chooses his laptop, ruffles my fur. I rumble with hope, anticipation, but he reaches up and snaps off the light. Jerry Krajnik and the Schrodinger the cat. Very cool. Very fun poem. Thanks for that. I always love two old cats toward evening. Thanks for sharing that, Jerry. And that's going to wrap it up for the open lines for today, for the prompt lines, I should say. And let's see, time to go to the Sciku. And the Sciku this week is based on this story right here, which we shall take a look at. This is from the Delft University of Technology, wherever the heck that is. I don't even know. But somewhere. I didn't look it up. Does it say at the bottom of the...
I do not know.
Yeah, I've never heard of that place before.
The Netherlands.
Delft. The Netherlands, okay.
All right, well, that's a little more excusable. It'd be really embarrassing if it was in Houston.
It would. Okay, so this is the story that caught my eye. Ant insights lead to robot navigation breakthrough. Okay, and so we learned about this in biology class way back in college. But one of the main ways that ants actually navigate is they call it here. There's a new word, I guess, 20 years later. They're calling it something a little different.
That seems fair.
They're calling it. Can I find the phrase in this? Like, I can't even remember what it's called. It's something to do with like but they count their steps, basically. So an ant will say, like, you know, it'll think to itself, like, 3 steps over, 6 to the right, kind of. And the weird thing is if you pick up an ant and, like, move it without it knowing, it'll still, like, follow those number of steps back to where it thinks its nest or den is or whatever. But then it'll just be confused. But like, hey, I know the hole's here somewhere. It's kind of sad, yeah. So they called it something in this paper. Didn't mention the phrase that I was calling it. But anyway, what they found, though, is ants actually have 2 things. Because if you do that, you have those, like, mean scientists, right, who are, like, moving you and, like, messing it with you. And so you can't just count your steps.
Scientists.
Sometimes you, like, get the angle wrong a little bit, maybe. Your steps are off, poor little guys. But they have a second thing that they do. Along the way, they take little snapshots every once in a while. Is like little anchors
with
for where
tiny
they can
Polaroid cameras.
Yeah. So they count their steps that way. So they're like, oh, my home is like 3 steps over and 5 steps to the left of this like leaf or something. And so they take all these little pictures along the way. And what happened here is scientists realized they could do that with robots. And they never thought of that before. But so to help robots navigate, you can't really use GPS because sometimes it's not accurate, and things change and things. But if you take little snapshots all over, you can like triangulate and then use steps to count where you're from.
That's neat.
So they can, for factory robots and things like that, they're going to use this as its way of navigating.
Wow.
Stolen from the ant world.
Oh.
And the phrase that I used to call it's called like optometrics or something they call it here. I can't find the word. But when I was in college, it was called dead reckoning.
Oh,
which is a cool, because they don't know anything except for the number of steps. So it's just called dead reckoning.
Right.
Like they're clueless about everything else. So here, after that long-winded explanation, it was interesting, I thought, was, and we missed there's some pictures of ants and drones and stuff like that too that they want to use. But anyway, the Sciku is this right here. Right here. Dead reckoning with our phones counting steps.
That's great.
Dead reckoning with our phones counting steps. That's the one that I wrote on our bikes.
Yeah.
When I forgot to let you pass at the hill you like to go down.
I like to go down the hill first, very fast.
Yeah. We usually, on a little narrow pass, we go single file.
Yeah, you go in front.
And I usually let her pass, and I totally forgot because I was, it was dead reckoning, and then I was trying to think of the haiku as we went to that spot. Anyway, that is the Sciku for this week, and that is the show for this week. Now let's see next week on the prompt lines. What are we going to have you do, Katie?
Okay, so we are going to write a poem that features multiple unexpected turns, leaps, or vaults. Okay, so do you know why I picked this prompt? Because we actually usually talk about it, but we didn't talk about it.
We didn't talk about it. Because you like poems that have turns?
Okay, yes. Okay, so for a few reasons. One is that there were a lot of great poems last month, but I think that something we as a group can focus on is having more turns. There were really so many wonderful poems with great images, talking about last month reading submissions, but like what they were lacking, and frankly, why Dick pulled ahead too and he had the best turn at the end. I really liked his turn, and it was, was a very introspective, interesting turn. But so I think it's a great thing to focus on. And then also it's tied into the Olympics. Oh. And I love watching the gymnastics.
Is that coming up? When is that?
It's coming up. Start? I think it starts on Friday.
Oh, well,
I believe, because I looked it up to make sure that it was relevant. So, and because I'm obsessed with the idea of a volta and a sonnet being like a vault in gymnastics, so that's why I want to focus on that.
So the whole sonnet, you're like running, and then you
vault, yes.
Okay,
and so,
vault,
and also too, with this, I'm hoping that we can use this as an excuse to really let wild and not be concerned about like, am I jumping too far? Am I going too far away? Like, just go crazy, have the best floor routine, give Simone Biles a run for her money.
Interesting. Okay. Well, I like the metaphor, and I like the we're gonna have fun with these leaps.
Yeah, that's the plan. Hopefully
all right. Well, that's the prompt for next week. Write a poem that features multiple unexpected turns, leaps, or voltas. A nice use of the verbal edit.
I know. I didn't type this, people.
No. But you texted me, and I can't.
I did text you half an hour before the show. It's accurate. That I will confess.
Okay, so that's going to be the prompt for next week. And the guest next week is, speaking of the prompt lines, the guest for next week is Suzanne Loomis, who is the prompt poet of the month in June. Now, Suzanne is a real staple of the LA poetry scene. She does a whole lot with Beyond Baroque and things like that. One of those poets that like everybody in LA knows. And I've known her for a long time, and I'm really excited to have her on an episode. Her most recent book, or most well-known book maybe, is Open 24 Hours. But she has a theater background. She's just a really interesting person. You got to know it a little bit. She was on the prompt lines.
She was great.
And she was great. She was so fun. We got to have like an hour with Suzanne Loomis. So that's going to be next week's guest, Rattlecast 255 with Suzanne Loomis, Sunday, July 28th. Your prompt poems with lots of leaps and turns and voltas. That's going to be the regular time, 8 p.m. Eastern, 5 p.m. Pacific. Hope you have a great week in the meantime, and we'll talk to you later.
Good night.
Good night.